right, so we'll get started at this point. Just a couple of comments that I'll make to introduce. First of all, again, I have with me this evening my two assistant superintendents. Dr. Kathleen Acker is my assistant superintendent for finance and management services. She has been my point person in terms of addressing a lot of the facility related and non-instructional issues. And Ms. Beth McCoy is my assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. She has been my point person for the learning models and curriculum and instruction issues. And also on tonight is Tracy Rothel, who's the building principal. And I see Ileana Perez Castillo in front of me, who's going to help in terms of working with our Spanish families. So just a little background here. This has been a laborious process, and I just need all of you to know that we have put a lot of time and energy in terms of trying to take every bit of guidance into account and picking up every stone and sweeping out what's underneath it to put us in the best position possible to start the year. There is no such thing as a perfect plan at this point. So, and I know there are a lot of perspectives out there as far as what should be done or what shouldn't be done or what's best and what's not best in terms of opening schools. We are trying to work with best practices, and I will also tell you that as a board member on the Suffolk County Superintendents Association, on the executive board, I am in ongoing contact with the Suffolk County Department of Health, they have been working very closely with us to work through some of the items related to health and safety, metric-based items, etc. I've also been in contact with folks at Northwell so that I can actually, in the event of the need for testing, particularly in terms of staff, we can work through testing in a relatively quick manner and get the results back relatively quickly. So I think we can get started at this point. I'm going to make one point before we get into the questions, and this is most important, and this is, I think, among my biggest concerns. I understand that this is not convenient. It's not convenient for anyone. Middle school students are probably, in many minds, less concerning than the younger students in terms of them being home at times. But I need to press this, and I need to press it hard from the start. If your child gets up in the morning and is not feeling well, please, please, please do not put them on the bus. Do not take them to school. Do not drop them off at school. There is a process through which you're going to have to fill out a questionnaire. We're going to make that as seamless as possible. There are temperature scanners that are going to be installed in all the building entrances. That's going to be another, that's only one symptom, but that's going to be another measure or mechanism that's in place. But I need you to understand there is no award for perfect attendance on school days. All of that is wiped out. It's very important that you keep your children home if there's any evidence of not feeling well. And they're welcome to participate remotely on that day, and they will be recorded as attendance present. And I'll probably repeat that a number of times. It's a very important matter that needs to be understood and understood well. Okay, I'm going to get right to it. I'm going to go in order here. All right, if the kids are signed up for band but want to drop, how do you go about doing so? I'm going to take each question one part at a time because some of them are multi-part. That's something that you can speak to the counselors about at the beginning of the year, and schedules can be adjusted. I understand the reservations in terms of participating in music programs under the circumstances, but we are going to make the best of this, and I certainly would hate to see any reticence on the part of participating in our music programs under the circumstances. I do understand, but I ask that you give it ample thought and ask any questions that you have. I don't know, Mrs. Rothel, you want to add anything to that?
No, I would agree. If you feel that you don't want to be part of the band, you do need to reach out to the counselor, who would then adjust your schedule as accordingly. When schedules are released, you can do that at that point, or you can send them an email now. So when they come to the building the week of the 24th, they'll make those adjustments.
The next part of the question is, will these children stay with the same group as they move around the building? So I think most of you had a chance to look at the way the cohorts are set up at the secondary level. We are breaking our middle school and high school students into 4 cohorts. And the reason we are doing so is because there will be times where they, unlike the elementary students, move about the building. So cohort, it's an important concept. It takes on different meanings depending on what the context is. But one form of cohort is that group of students who is assigned to Tuesday, the group assigned to Wednesday, the group assigned to Thursday, the group assigned to Friday. The idea is if a child tests positive in a Tuesday cohort, it will only impact some or possibly all of the children in that Tuesday cohort. it would not necessarily impact those that are not in the building on that day. I know that's a bit more conservative than some other places. I ask that you do your best not to compare. I understand it's natural. I do it myself, but understand there are two guiding principles here for us. That's safety and flexibility. That's why we built in the phases. That's why we've got smaller groups to start in each building. Okay, so as they move about the building, obviously they could come into contact with anyone in their daily cohort. Where will they eat lunch? The secondary children will eat lunch. The students will eat lunch in the cafeterias. The lunch periods will be spread out further. There are three things that we have to work with our students to accomplish here. One is training them in terms of social distancing. And if I have questions that come up there, I can elaborate. The other is mask wearing. The default setting is students need to be wearing a mask at all times with appropriate breaks worked in, age level appropriate breaks worked in. And the third item is the physical barriers. Every desk in the district is going to have mounted on it a three-sided, I don't have one in here to show, but a three-sided translucent flexible polycarbonate barrier. It will be mounted to the desk in brackets that are adhesive on. They are flexible, so that the student accidentally falls into it, it'll just come off the desk. It's not no sharp edges or anything like that. So I know that there are some places that are or one or the other, social distancing or masks or barriers. We are not abiding by that principle. We are working with the distancing, with the masks and the barriers, with appropriate mask breaks, and with a limited number of students in the building at the same time. Okay. All right, can you review the schedule for Finley in phase 1, and when will we know which days our children will be in school so we can plan for childcare? Okay, so I'll defer to Ms. Rothel at the end of this if she has anything to add, but if you look at the back portion of the plan, Appendix A does show who's assigned to what cohort. So you'll see that I don't have the alphabetic breakdown in front of me, but it's by alpha last name, and there are some adjustments made because some students in the same household may have different last names and be siblings or half siblings. They are grouped together. So 4 cohorts. One will be in school on Tuesday, one will be in school on Wednesday, the next group will be in school on Thursday, and the other group will be in school on Friday with a rotating Monday schedule. So every week there will be a group that has a 2-day-a-week in-school schedule. And again, we are starting conservatively here for 3 reasons. Well, for a couple of main reasons. Number one, obviously the cohort model, we want to make sure that we can pressure test our protocol and practices. We are doing as many exercises as possible to do this before the kids get in, but once they're in is when we're really going to see what we need to tweak and what we need to leave in place, very firmly in place. So that's what the schedule will look like. So it is a 1 day per week in school setting to start with a rotating 2 day per week possibility. Okay.
I just want to add, I have that information. So for Tuesdays is A through D. So as long as you're falling in there, that will be your Tuesday. Wednesdays is the letter E through K. On Thursdays, we will do L through R-E-T. Right? Our R's were a little bit, a lot of them. So we had to split R's in half. So it's R-E-T. And then on our Friday cohorts, it'll be R-E-Y through Z. And as Mr. Plansky mentioned, those Mondays will rotate. As many of you know, I do send out Sunday night emails. I will be sending out weekly updates, and I plan on getting a Remind Me app so I can send you each day as today is cohort this day to make sure you know which day you're coming in and to let you know which Mondays those cohorts will rotate on. So please look for my Sunday night emails and for any Remind Me updates on day of the week as an A day, B day, and to make sure you know which cohort's coming in each day.
So a lot of background work. Thank you, Mrs. Rothel. A lot of background work has been done already. Our student management system has been modified and actually upgraded. There is another feature in it that shows a very specific column color coding. So it's a blue, yellow, orange, whatever the color are corresponds on our end to a specific cohort. So teachers can see very readily who is part of which cohort and who should be in on a given day. Mm-hmm. And our goal is to get this information, continue to get this information out there as comprehensively, as pervasively as possible. Okay. All right, I'm going to defer a couple of these questions to you, Mrs. Rothel, just to talk about the mechanics of the schedule. first part of this is, will they get outside ever?
Yes, so
okay, go ahead.
sure. So on that part, what we're hoping to do is in the lunchroom, we have approximately 60 seats for kids to sit in that are desks that sit individually. Our hope is that we'll actually split those lunch periods in half, with 20 minutes with kids outside, 20 minutes for them to eat. So that will be some outside time, and that will be through the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th lunch periods. So that will be put in. And I know that another idea is during inclement weather to have those kids actually in the LGI to split them up so that they do have some time away, so they're not sitting 40 minutes in a desk in a lunchroom, but to have them in 2 different locations so that we don't have a lot of kids in one section. So that's the plan for lunch and getting kids outside.
I'm going to digress for a second because I meant to mention something before. There's been questions about, right now to start, we have 2 options. Your children can participate in the hybrid model as it's set for Findlay. If you have concerns at any point, whether to start or after we start, you can elect to go the full remote 5-day-per-week model. I cannot recommend what's best for you and your family. Like I said, there are different beliefs and perspectives out there, but I do not want a child or family uncomfortable with what we have in place here. We're going to do this as comprehensively as we can, with, like I said, every detail attended to the greatest extent practical, but we need you to feel comfortable with what you're experiencing, what your child is going to experience. And I see some of the kids are on. So this is, you guys are old enough to express your feelings in terms of comfort or discomfort. It will be a quick transition if you start in hybrid and would like to pull out and go to the full remote model. It may take some time to get you from full remote to hybrid if you want to go in that direction. And that's why we're asking you on that form to give us a sense of how long, what your mindset is at this point, because we are planning class sizes, rosters, etc., and organization of the building in some cases based on the responses that you are providing. If you want to start hybrid, you do not have to fill out any form. Okay, so going back to this, will they have an orientation walkthrough? I'm going to let you address that one as well, Mrs. Rothel.
Yes, so at this time, we do have a orientation plan. I will send out more information. We will actually have the orientation based on your cohort. So if you are cohort 1, we'll have a certain set time. Cohort 2, 3, and 4, we will allow you to walk through the building so the students can find their classrooms, identify where they'll go for each period. We'll probably have about an hour of that where it's open to keep the building not where we have a ton of people, and we're probably going to ask for just 1 parent to come with 1 kid, again, keeping the numbers down. And those of you that are virtual, you don't need to necessarily be in the building. However, we will offer you a time to come in based on your alphabet number, or your alphabet letter, I should say. So that is a plan in the works. We'll send out more details of times when it comes closer to the actual orientation.
I just wanted to clarify that that would be for 7th grade students that haven't been to the building yet. And there also will be a video of some sort that will help to acclimate students just to the new environment, the temperature scanners, what the hallway will look like, those types of things, just to make all students as comfortable as possible returning to the building.
Yeah, and another thing that we used to do is we used to allow kids to put things in their locker, to have that time to understand there will not be lockers, as I know Mr. Plansky has put in the plan. So that won't be part of the process. It will pretty much be going just from class to class so you can see what your day will look like. And we will be providing areas within the classroom for kids to store backpacks if needed. However, I've already been in communication with teachers that they will be limiting the amount of supplies that kids need. And the Chromebook is pretty much with just some basic materials will be needed each day in classroom. So hopefully the kids will not be lugging big backpacks or heavy backpacks around all day.
I'm going to move quickly over questions that were answered already, but I do want to acknowledge that the questions are there so the parents who are on with us tonight know I didn't skip over them. So the next question, part of that question was, will they go to lockers? If not, how will they carry everything, Chromebook, books, jackets, etc.? So that was just addressed. So thank you. These are all great questions. All right, how will band work? Mrs. Rothel, I'm going to refer to you in a minute, but let me ask the rest of the question. Will there be pull-out group lessons? What about symphonic band, jazz band, which meets before school? Will that take place this year? And if you start, I can fill in the blanks.
Yeah, so at this time, we're going to have in-school band sessions. There will be those 4 different cohorts that will go in where it's scheduled actually within the class day. The beginning of the school day, I think we're waiting on before and after school events until we get to the point where we feel comfortable that students can come into the building early or kids can stay late. So I don't think that those will be starting probably till October or November based on the situation and the decision made by the district. But the actual band classes, we will have smaller groups of kids. We can separate them by 12 feet. At this point, we've been looking at numbers, so band should run. As in individual lessons, that will probably take place, but it will probably not take place till October. There's so many things that we need to work through to make sure kids are in the building before we start pulling kids out of classes. But it was still in the schedule to be done, but probably not till October.
And just to add a piece to that, and you may have seen this in the plan, while 6 feet is the set distance, social distancing, that is the minimum distance between children at all times, particularly if they're not wearing masks, even though we are requiring them in general at all times. When they are participating in band and they are playing in a section that involves wind instruments, and we are looking at that as woodwinds and brass instruments, they will have to be 12 feet apart. This also applies to those who are participating in chorus, and also those who are participating in aerobic physical activity. There won't be any contact activities in phys ed, but there may be activities where, off the top of my head, jumping rope, where they're 12 feet apart. They will be more than that. It may be an outdoor activity, but because they are breathing so heavily and the aerosol particulates are a concern, they need to be spread out even further.
And I do know that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do know chorus, I've already been in contact with Mrs. Graber. We'll probably be doing many of those classes in the LGI where kids can actually sit in the seats and she can be on the stage. Therefore, there's definitely more room between everybody, and also airing out the room. That was something else that's been a concern. One period could be in the classroom, one could be the LGI. So we are working to make sure that kids are social distance and that those performing groups can still continue.
Okay. Next question, I know we answered already, just to make sure that it's out there. Will there be an orientation for incoming 7th graders?
Yes.
We got that one. Okay, sliding down. And all of the metrics that I have seen for quarantining classes at home and for notifying families when there are cases refer to confirmed cases, but the CDC guidelines are quite clear that contact tracing and testing should be done for laboratory confirmed and probable COVID-19 patients. All right, so a couple of comments there. And I can elaborate on this as it comes to me. First of all, we are in ongoing communication with the Suffolk County Department of Health. And I will mention that the trigger for quarantining is a confirmed positive case. However, if there is somebody who is in the building and has a symptom, they are going to be sent home. The only way that person, and I say person, not student, because it could be a staff member, if somebody is out of the building with symptoms, they will not be permitted to re-enter until one of two things happens. Either we have a negative COVID test result in hand, or a note from a healthcare provider that indicates that whatever that person has is confirmed something other than COVID-19. And this is all as we've designed it based on the ongoing conversations we've had with the Suffolk County Department of Health. Just to give you an example of what this could look like. If you're in a class, a Tuesday cohort, and somebody in one of your child's or one of your classes speaking to the students tests positive, you will get immediate communication from the district and be told to stay home. My next communication, probably within minutes, will be to the Suffolk County Department of Health, and either they or I will then confirm with you that you are on, and in all likelihood, there's no way around it, a 14-day quarantine period. I'd love to tell you that this is not going to happen. I am expecting it to happen at some point and probably at multiple times. And please understand that if we are directing you in this regard, there is no option for us. It has to be done because we've got to protect the health and safety of the masses at this point. The only way you can return, again, following that quarantine period, a 14-day quarantine period, there is unfortunately no way around that. If the child is feeling well during that period, they are more than welcome, and positive attendance, if they are participating in the on the remote platform, they can participate and engage in all their classes remotely. Contact tracing, you're going to see some changes in terms of how we do things in terms of gathering data. So for example, if your child rides a bus, on every bus, there will be attendance taken. There won't be any children riding that bus that aren't permitted to be on that bus. We need to know, I should say, who's on each bus, who's in each classroom, who's in the bathroom at any given time. And we're going to minimize the number of students in a bathroom as best we can. And obviously, keeping it to one at a time minimizes that concern. Push-in staff, we'll have to monitor where they are. So we need to know where people are at all times so that we can provide the information to the Suffolk County Department of Health. They are the ones doing the contact tracing, but they are working with us. We have to feed them most of the information that they're going to use. They tell us at this point that they're going to be able to work quickly. We have to trust them to do what they need to do, but we will be working in tandem and in partnership with them throughout this process. Okay, lunch in the cafeteria. What is the normal, I'm going to defer to Mrs. Rothel here, what is the normal, or Dr. Acker as well, what is the normal capacity of the cafeteria, and how does this compare to planned occupancy, including kids and adults who will now occupy that room? Let's start with that, and I'll get to the other piece of it.
Starting with occupancy, at this point, we have between 35 to 50 kids each lunch period that will be there. And so that's for each cohort at this point. As I said, we have room for 60 kids with 6 feet of social distancing where kids can take their masks off and actually eat. And also with the hopes of doing a 20-minute in and a 20-minute out that will actually cut that in half. So those 50 will be 25 and 25, and the 35 will be in the teens. For kids in there, so there'll be very limited kids in the cafeteria. And we do have 2 lunchroom aides and 2 security officers that will be in there at that point, and any other teacher assistants that need to be with certain students, but there will be limited adults in there at the same time.
Yeah, the cafeteria tables have been removed and they've been replaced with desks that will have shields on them.
Thank you, that's a good point. I think that's going to be surprising when the children first see them, but that's obviously going to social distancing. They can't eat while wearing a mask. We all know that, but the physical barrier is yet another protective mechanism. I just want to go back to the prior question about the testing and contact tracing for a minute. Last Friday, we had our plan submitted. Everything is in good working order, and the governor asked for a couple of other things to be added prominently in terms of posting on the district website. So just so you know, there is a separate pullout document that's now posted in English and Spanish that talks to COVID-19, the screening. It goes beyond just testing and tracing. It talks to screening. It talks to testing and places where you can secure a COVID test, and also a list or a link to a list of healthcare providers for anyone who wants to use it, and also for those who have insurance issues. So that's there. There is also a very specifically laid out return to work, return to school protocol, and also a section on contact tracing. And again, everything we do here will be in alignment with the Suffolk County Department of Health and the New York State Contact Tracing Program. The other thing that has been pulled out, as per the request, is the full distance learning plan. So it's pulled out separately because if we do have to switch quickly, if the district is shut down in the composite, meaning not just if a class is quarantined, not just if a building is closed, but if the entire district is shut down, we will go to a slightly different schedule at every building. That has been pulled out with some of the information that goes along with it. It's a separate document on the website. It's all in there are 2 places you can find it. I can actually show it. Bear with me for a second. Just going to do this briefly. So you can see right where my cursor is here, right in the center of the web page, everything is posted prominently and in bold. And this is also right next to it. The media links is where these forums will be posted in case you'd like to help guide somebody who didn't see it this evening or wasn't able to participate due to timing. And if you hit the quick click icon here, you'll also see everything under reopening plan, any communications from me, the district, and also the same reopening plan items. So it should be quick access. We're going to keep reinforcing this so people know where to go. Okay. All right, I'm going to let Dr. Acker take a piece of this. This is about ventilation or square footage for the rate of exchange of fresh air. So why don't we take this opportunity to talk about ventilation in general?
Okay, so Just so that you're aware that there will be no spaces across the district that are not falling under what is required for ventilation. If an area did not meet the 15, you have that number, 15 square
15 cubic feet per minute.
Right, of air, which we monitor and we have an instrument that can measure it, that area would be shut down. But at the current time, there's no areas in our district that need to be shut down. We have our Univent system that we are going to be placing HEPA filters in, and those units bring in fresh air constantly. And I know there's a lot of talk about opening windows, but honestly, the CDC recommends not opening windows because that air is not filtered and you could have a lot of pollen coming in and whatnot, whereas the Univents are bringing in fresh air that is filtered. If a room has a window air conditioner, we are unable to put the HEPA filters in there, so we have purchased air scrubbers with HEPA filters that will clean the air that is coming out of the air conditioner. The thing that a lot of people are asking about is fans. CDC does not recommend the use of fans in the classroom because it does accelerate the movement of particulates through the air, and it's actually aimed at people's faces. So the CDC is not recommending the use of fans. I'm not sure if there's anything else in that area that you need me to cover.
Well, I think you hit most of it. A lot of the concerns that we're hearing on our end from the staff is just, we know it's hot in September and
Right.
October. Doesn't mean we can't open windows, but understanding that just, keeping a window open, blowing fan air further into an indoor facility, and same for an air conditioner. The air conditioner and the fan can honestly do more damage than help because it's blowing air particulates further into where we are on the inside of the building. So we have to comprehensively look at the types of filters we're using, HEPA filters, MERV ratings. You'll see that the number 13 used quite often. We're installing those wherever we can. Obviously, the HEPA filters are important, and the air scrubbers are an added, for those that know what an air scrubber is, they use them in large factories to clean the exhaust that's coming out of smokestacks. We'll be using that on a smaller scale in some of our air conditioning units that have to be there. So we do understand that September can be hot, even October can be hot. We've got to work through this together and try and keep the air circulation as constant as possible and continue. I'm looking at my Univent right now to continue to get the outside air in as clean a manner as possible. And that 15 cubic feet per minute is something that's going to be reviewed, and that's per person. So that's going to be reviewed in facilities routinely. We're going to continue to inspect and review the efficacy of our air handling systems. Okay. Okay, Mrs. Rothel, I'm going to involve you here. And the question is, how are the extra help sessions? Hang on a second, I just lost my place. How are the extra help sessions going to work for in and out of school students?
So teachers will still be required to offer extra help. So they'll either have a Tuesday afternoon or Thursday afternoon session. Their sessions will then probably be where kids can get off the bus or they can get home, but they do set up 2 days, 1 day a week. They will be offering a after school session by Zoom, or I should say Google Meets is what the teachers will be offering.
Okay. And I'm going to have you talk to this one as well. A question about moving from room to room. Will teachers be moving from room to room while kids are staying put, or will the kids crowd the hallways to all move from class to class?
The students will be moving from class to class, and that was a big reason why we went to 4 cohorts instead of 2. That way we only have about 150 kids in the building at one time. There will be marks on the floor for the lanes, as in keeping kids apart from each other so that they walk down one area, but we are not able to keep the kids in the classroom. They will move and the teachers will stay put.
Okay. And that is obviously a lot easier to accomplish at the elementary level where push-ins are going to be the norm.
Yes. One thing that will probably push in is that we will have our librarian that will be pushing into classrooms, but at this point, all the other classes will have to go to a specific room, such as tech, fax, info technology. There's certain classes that are just specific that we can't have those teachers push in. They have to go to a room that is set up for those classes.
And we will be spreading classes across that building, even with if you're talking 4 cohorts at Finley, Mrs. Rothel, you're talking about, I think, less than 200 kids in the building on any given day.
I think it's between 150 and 180, depending on if they're virtual or not. Some people are full virtual, which means the number changes depending on the day.
And obviously the expectation during passing will be the masks are on.
Yes.
And we will, and please understand that this is going to be a challenge for everybody, including the students who are not going to necessarily be comfortable wearing masks. We have talked about ways to desensitize and to help our little guys understand and wear them and make it sort of fun for them. When you get to 7th and 8th grade, we know that you can think about this a little bit more deeply, and we will expect from you. The masks are not, they're not an option. I know somebody asked about a mask exception the other night. Those are so incredibly limited that under any general circumstance, it's not just I don't feel comfortable wearing it. I'm talking about counting on one hand on a given day a child with a serious health issue. Even if you read some of the guidance from the American Academy of Pediatrics, even a child with asthma is not necessarily excused from wearing a mask. So please understand a mask exception is quite rare. Okay. Just for clarification, if there is a confirmed COVID case in the school, will the entire cohort, assuming phase 1, be quarantined for 14 days? I can't promise you that it won't, but it depends on where that child has been, what time of day it occurs. It may very well be that we have to take that, and the default setting may be if that child has been in its period 8 and that child has been in multiple areas in the building, the safe call there is to quarantine that cohort for 14 days. That would amount to 3 school days in the manner we have it set it up at this point. But again, the idea here is to protect the masses and make sure that we are not contributing to any community spread. So assume that that will be the case unless there's an exception or something is more contained from the start. Okay, will the regular bell schedule go back into effect if the students go back full time? And Mrs. Rothel, you can add to this, but the bell schedule, for lack of a better term, or the schedule itself, Finley is intact from, refresh my memory here, 7:50. I got the intermediate in my head. 7:55 to
about 8 o'clock is the first period start. So 7:50 till 8 o'clock is getting to homeroom, and then the first period starts at about 8:05 and run from there in 42-minute periods.
All right. So the students at home and the students at school will be following the same schedule, either remotely or when you're in school. The schedule looks different now. If you haven't seen it or reviewed it, when we flipped the switch as best we could in the spring, there was a period of synchronous instruction. I believe it was an hour per day per content area. And then the rest of the day was working through posted assignments, teacher interaction, office hours. This has changed to a period by period schedule. So you would technically follow the same day that you would at home as if you were in school. I understand that there are children that may be, or students that may be very easily accomplishing what they need to do without having to be logged on every second of the day. I don't think that necessarily has to change as long as they're engaged at some point during the period and they're completing their work to the expectation of the teacher. However, I know that the majority of students are going to benefit from that routine and that period by period format. This is school, whether you're at home or you're in the building on a given day. Okay. All right, are students getting an orientation to the school layout so new entrants are familiar with the school before school starts? This came up with the primary and the intermediate folks as well, and I don't want to speak for Mrs. Rothel here, but I do know that she would be absolutely willing to work with any families who are new to the district so they can gain a sense of school layout. I don't know if you want to piggyback on that.
Yeah, so the 7th grade orientation, I can also make it where it's anyone new to the district. I have no problem including that. I would ask you, though, to stay with your cohort, to be with your letter, just to make sure that the amount of people that we have in the building at a time is not overwhelming. So that information will be sent out as we get closer to the school starting. There'll be a mailing, and again, there'll be email and connected messages sent out a lot. So I'm going to apologize in advance, but I will be sending out plenty of communication to make sure that everybody is aware. And I will ask the PTA to also help out with getting that information out to parents.
Okay, moving on. All right, how will incoming 7th graders conduct orientation? I believe we've addressed that already. And this is, I believe this is new. When will parents and students receive student schedules? Mrs. Rothel?
There's discussion, I think, at this point, if Ms. McCoy wants to support that. I believe we're saying August 21st. We're going to open up a portal 20, okay, I wasn't sure if the 21st or 28th. I know the high
elementary-
school was going to
I'm
be
sorry,
the
elementary
21st.
is
So,
The
okay.
elementary schedules are being mailed on August 28th. The high school and the middle school schedule will be posted on August 21st, so parents have time to review them. Our counselors will be back on the 26th, so if there are any concerns or adjustments that need to be made, they will be back on the 26th to begin adjusting them. However, we wanted to give parents time to review their schedules with the students, so they'll have from the 21st through the 26th to review the student schedule for the upcoming year.
And those will be posted on the portals as well as sent home in hard copy fashion.
I am not sure if the secondary level has mailed them.
In the past, we have not mailed them. It's only been by a parent portal. And at the 7th grade orientation, we do actually give students a hard copy of their schedule. So they're able to walk through the building and locate their classrooms.
Okay, thank you. Are students going to have Latin, foreign language, and other specials? If so, how does that work with the cohort if not all kids are in the same language? I'll start it. Mrs. Rothel, you can finish it. The classes are going to be set up as they would typically be set up. So if Latin has 25 children in a classroom, typically, that we are establishing these cohorts and working these schedules, so that should be essentially split among the 4 days. It may not be perfectly even, but it'll work in the manner that we have it set up because we do have 4 cohorts in place. So one day you may have 7, one day you may have 6, the other day you may have 6 and 6, or it may be a little bit not as even, but there will be fewer children in the classroom on a given day, much fewer than would be if the entire class were present at the same time.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. The foreign language will run exactly as a core class would. Every class is set up, so cohorts are based on your alpha information.
All right, next question. If a student or staff member contracts COVID, will they have to test negative to return to school? If not, how will we know they are not negative and not contagious? Okay, so that is, I'll deal with the first part first. There are 2 different processes here. One that results in a student or staff member being quarantined, and that results from them being exposed to somebody else who has tested positive. If somebody is the person who is tested positive, the isolation period is established by, I believe, well, I know it's the Suffolk County Department of Health and the New York State Department of Health have determined the isolation period to be 10 days. The reason quarantine is longer than isolation because there is a period of time during which it takes to contract and develop the symptoms. For them to return, there will need to be a document from medical healthcare provider that they are cleared to return and are no longer contagious, and that may very well involve that negative test. Okay, Mrs. Rothel, I'm going to refer to you here. What is drop-off and pickup procedure?
So that's a very good question. So the parents at this point for drop-off, we are actually going to be changing the location. It will be in the back of the building. And again, that more information of exactly where security will be there to help you with the drop-off location. I would ask, or I need to request that students do not arrive at the building any sooner than 7:30, based on the fact that we do not want to have hordes of kids waiting in any given area because school starts at 7:50. So at this point, I know some kids used to get dropped off earlier. They could sit in the blue zone and wait. We will not be allowing students into the building any earlier than 7:30. So the closest you can get to our start time of 7:50 would be very much appreciated.
Moving on. Colleges are requiring students to be COVID tested within 2 weeks prior to arriving on campus. Why wouldn't our district require testing of all students and staff prior to school opening so that we can quarantine the asymptomatic students, families, staff before they expose people in each building? The state requires vaccination records for less threatening illnesses to be up to date upon starting the school year. It seems prudent to reduce the risk for COVID exposure through testing. And what I can tell you here is that it is not recommended for us to engage in that comprehensive testing before a child or even the staff members are in place. And that's a conversation we have had with the Suffolk County Department of Health. And you know, we're going to have to work through that a little bit differently. Okay, when will the schedules be available? That we've addressed already. All right, there's a small number of parents here. I'm sure every parent will be told to keep sick children at home, or we to trust every family. I agree with the concern here, and we are going to do our very best to make sure that this message gets across. I have 140 participants here tonight, just lost one, 137. But the bottom line is, even the people on the call tonight, the tendency may be, well, I'm not sure, let me send them. We're going to keep spreading that message as best we can. I cannot necessarily control, and this is where you have to make a decision as far as what you're most comfortable with, what every family member is going to be doing at home. We will be purchasing, and actually we have everything just about in place to move forward with this. Right now, my 12-month staff are filling out a form that has them answering 5 questions. 5 questions have to do with fever, 100.0 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, symptoms other than fever. Have they been in contact with somebody who's tested positive? Have they been in contact with somebody with symptoms? Have they traveled to one of the restricted areas? Right now, I believe it's 33 states or so, and obviously numerous countries around the world. Answer yes to any of those questions. You're not to be in the building. This app, which we will instruct use in before the school year begins, feeds right into our student management system and will inform the administration as well as the teacher in every classroom as far as who has not filled out the questionnaire or who may have answered yes to any of those 5 questions. Now, the idea is to catch them before they enter the building. We're going to do the best we can with that, and that's another reason why we're starting with small cohorts, so that we can manage our processes with a relatively small number of students to start. And you know how many are in that building typically, and we're starting with 25% of that. The other thing we'll have in place at the entrance, any entrances used, there will be, it almost looks like an airport scanner. It's a temperature scanner. It can scan about 70 people per minute at max. We're going to move more slowly with the numbers that we have coming in. And it does flash on the screen. It's an infrared scanner, the temperature of everybody walking through. If somebody shows 100.0 or higher, they will be pulled aside. It will be confirmed with a handheld. Anything we record is only passed or not passed in terms of temperature, not specific temperatures. If somebody is confirmed as 100.0 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, they will be guided to an isolation room and prepared for pickup by a parent. If it's a staff member, they will be sent home, and they will not be able to return prior to providing a negative COVID test result. Okay. Will textbooks be utilized, and if so, taken home or left in school, or will they be available on online platforms? Ms. McCoy, I'm sorry, I should have deferred to you first, but I'm going to start with you there.
So for the past few years, we have been, any purchases that we've made regarding textbooks have had an online component, not necessarily in preparation for this, but due to the fact that we were a one-to-one district with devices for students. So we wanted to be able to get updates on content and curriculum within each of the textbooks rather than buying a hard copy that really can get outdated rather quickly. So many of the resources that we have are online. If there are sets of textbooks and we have enough to send them home, they will be sent home. However, if it's a shared class set, they will be left in the building. And we will not be using items generally for 3 days. So if a group uses them, the books would be set aside for approximately 3 days before using them again with another group of students.
Thank you. Okay, will incoming 7th graders be able to tour the building prior to the first day of school? I believe we addressed that already. When are schedules released? I believe that was addressed. That was the August 21st posting date. Obviously, there will be, I think we'll have the additional conversations about print schedules, which we don't typically mail home, but all of these schedules will also indicate cohort. All right, if my child is remotely learning but is not engaging, only listening, will they be penalized? And just to kind of put my teacher hat on here, this is like any classroom environment. It's our responsibility as educators to try and engage these kids to the best of our ability. But it's also true that some children, some students are more apt, they're more vocal, more apt to participate just like that, and others who prefer to kind of more reticent, they'll remain a little bit quieter. Please understand that accommodations are going to have to be made here. If you are there and you're completing the work and you are meeting the expectations in terms of rigor and the work submitted, engaging, only listening, as opposed to participating in the same manner that maybe you would if you were in the classroom, will not result in a penalty. Sorry for the long-windedness there, but there's going to have to be some flexibility here, particularly for those who are learning at home. Okay, will there still be a gym requirement, and can an outside activity be counted toward that requirement? So there's going to be some flexibility in terms of remote physical education. Can I ask you to speak to that, Mrs. Rothel? Who muted herself, and now I have to unmute her. Okay. There you go.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you just go over the question one more time? I was too stressed about unmuting myself.
Will there be a physical education requirement, and can an outside activity be counted toward that requirement? And I think that second part may relate to the at-home, the remote setting.
Yeah, I would assume that you have different things. I know that the PE teachers will probably, as they did in the spring, have logs that you fill in, activities that you do. So I think, as Mr. Plansky had talked about earlier, there will be some more individual yoga, jumping jacks, things that are not where the kids are in contact. I'm sure there will be options for students at home to participate in those type of activities and record that information or log that information for PE teachers to see.
PE teachers have requested a hotspot so that they can take classes outside and continue to live stream home to students. However, that may or may not work as effectively as we'd like it to. If you've used a hotspot on a field, you know, sometimes it may work and sometimes it may not. So they will be prepared with alternate activities so that students can fulfill the PE requirement, whether it's live streamed or not.
And Ms. McCoy, do you want to just speak to the progression of how the live streaming, how we're envisioning it at this point, how it will start and how it may morph into a little bit more a flexible process?
Sure. So each smartboard in the classroom has a webcam that has been mounted to the smartboard. So when we start the year off, the video of the class will actually be off, just so that we are basically live streaming. So a student at home would see whatever is taking place on the smartboard, any lesson materials that are pulled up on the smartboard. If there's a document camera and a teacher's utilizing that, that also would be on the smartboard, so students at home would see it. And the students at home would be able to hear everything that the teacher's saying. We are putting the camera off at the beginning of the year so that we can just make sure our bandwidth is able to handle all of this live streaming at the same time. And if we see that things are successful with the amount of bandwidth that we have, then we will allow teachers to begin turning the video on if they are comfortable with that. If we need more bandwidth, we'll have to look into what more we need to do so that we can increase the video usage. Students will be able to ask questions in a chat or messaging feature, either likely privately to the teacher. So for a student that might not be as comfortable participating in front of the whole class, could type a message directly to the teacher. During downtime in the classroom, when students are doing independent work, the teacher would either have an opportunity to look at that chat at that time, or perhaps even after the period is over and get back to that student that's home at a later time. There's also capability of the student asking a question through the smartboard. So they would basically unmute themselves, just like I am right now, and the class would hear the question, so they truly can interact from the home environment with their class.
Just to elaborate on that, I know Dr. Acker and I had a conversation today. We have reached out. We are going to be increasing our bandwidth, and the company actually said we were among the first to ask for that, so they're giving us priority. We are going to be prepared to handle these technologies. We're also aware of the things that can fall short at the beginning. We're going to do this very carefully and in a calculated manner so that connectivity remains fully available to all involved. And again, the devices will be in everybody's hands, and the mobile hotspots will be distributed as needed to all families in district. I think how will students move classes on the day they're in the building? How will the teachers move classes? I believe we addressed that already. Mrs. Rothel, anything to add there? I think we hit that one.
No, I think we did address that. It'll run like a normal day, just with 25% of the kids in the building.
Again, a question about outside time, which we addressed, but I think this is a new question. I understand the students will wear their masks in lessons, and when moving around the building, will there be mask breaks? So yes, there have to be mask breaks. I can tell you, just speaking from my own experience, walking up a set of stairs in the building I'm in now, getting to the top of those stairs on a hot day wearing a mask, it's it can be brutal. So the ideal time for a mask break may be when they're in a classroom, they're socially distant, they are, the physical barriers are in front of them, and the teacher is far enough away to do what they're doing. It may be by row. The teacher says, okay, this row, take your mask off for a couple of seconds, couple of minutes, whatever the case may be. But like I said, the default setting is those masks should be on and they need to be worn appropriately, carefully, etc. But mask breaks would be, the ideal time for that would be if they are stationary, they are socially distant, and like I said, it can be done in an alternating row fashion. It can be done in an organized manner.
And of course, in lunch, you'll have to have our mask breaks in lunch.
Correct. I mean, there are obvious times when a child eating or drinking is one of them where they can't be wearing a mask. Okay, when will phase 2 begin? That's the magic question, I guess. We initially looked at a time frame. We took that time frame out. There's a couple of things that we have to look at very carefully before we can determine whether we're ready to go to phase 2. And there's nothing that says we can't look at anything between a phase 1 and a phase 2, or a phase 2 and a phase 3. The governor can do it. We can look at it as well. A couple of things we'll look at. Number one, positive test rates. The metrics that the governor was talking about that is allowing us to open school to begin with. So we would look at that regionally. We can also look at it on a school community basis. And if there are concerns in the community, or if there are multiple positive cases in a school building, that may be a problem. And that'll slow down, certainly slow down a shift from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3. The other thing that we're going to look at are procedures and protocol. We are starting with small groups, and the reason we are starting with small groups is so that we can really firmly and very carefully pressure test the things that we have in place. We are trying to be as responsible and as safety and flexibly oriented as possible, but if I have 700 kids in a building to start, it's going to make it very difficult. And listen, I'm not going to criticize what other districts are doing or not doing. We feel what's right for Huntington now is to start with smaller groups of students so we can very carefully watch what's happening and make adjustments as needed. The other piece of this that may contribute to phase 2 is how many families make the determination to keep their children home in a full remote setting. So obviously, if there is a large percentage of 7th graders or 8th graders that choose full remote, that may shift the phase 1 to phase 2 for those that are in the hybrid setting. That may move that along a little bit more quickly, but this has got to be done with safety in mind first. Okay. Will bathrooms be monitored to know exactly who students are coming in contact with? The answer is yes, and I see Ms. Rothel nodding, so I'm going to let her pick that up from here.
So what we'll do is during classes, teachers do have what they call duties that they have to do. There will be teachers stationed outside of the bathrooms. They will then be recording kids that go in and hoping that it will be one student at a time that will be in the bathroom. So it's not congregation of kids or groups of kids. Our biggest concern, of course, is during the changing of the periods. However, with the fact that there are limited amounts in the kids and the teachers in the hallways, we're hoping to keep the kids out of the bathroom during that time and have them going to the bathroom during class time instead. I don't want to lock any bathrooms because I know that does become an issue. When you only have one bathroom available, kids will congregate and will be waiting in line. However, I do want to make sure that we do have record of whenever a kid goes to a restroom, the nurse's office, the guidance office, the main office. We will be keeping track of whenever kids are moving throughout the hallway during the day, when it's not during changing of classes.
I just want to add too that in all the buildings, we will be putting lanes in the hallways, so that students know where to walk within that lane so that they're not getting too close to each other as they're moving throughout the hallway. So we're working on one-way lanes and whatever the principals need as far as one-way staircases. So we've been doing those markings in the hallways.
And I'll also add, I don't think this was mentioned, although I think from what we know of this virus right now, and there are still things that we don't, that it is much more easily spread in the form of aerosol particulates. However, and surfaces aren't as much of a risk. That doesn't mean they are not a risk. So what we have done is we have installed touchless sensors on every toilet, on every sink. So as you wash, as you use the facility, you don't have to touch anything. You don't have to touch anything for that matter. If there are sinks that are too close to each other with no barriers in between them, there will be sinks that may be taken offline so that if there happens to be more than one child in a bathroom at any one given time, they are still able to use a sink in a socially distant manner. Anything else to add there, Dr. Acker?
Nope, you got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, approximately how many students per classroom? May vary depending on the size of the room, but I mean, I have to, and Mrs. Rothel, I'll let you handle this, but I don't think any classroom in this district is designed to fit in a socially distant manner more than 15 children. It may be less than that at the middle school level, primarily because we have 4 cohorts in place. And I'll let you pick that up, Mrs. Rothel, if you'd like to.
At this point, we have probably about 5 or 6 classes that are sitting at 15. They will be relocated to a larger area just to ensure that we maintain the social distancing. Most of the classes are 12 or under. And if they are not 12 or under, as I said, we are making changes. We're moving to make sure cohorts stay at that number, or we'll be moving the classroom to a bigger area so that those kids don't feel that they're in a tight space with 15 kids. But we're using kind of 12 as the magic number. When we come to chorus and gym, or PE, I should say, those numbers may be a little bit higher, but the areas are bigger. As I said, the LGI will be used and the gymnasium is a bigger area, so we can have up to 20 to 24 kids in the gymnasium at one time.
Thank you. Okay, will studio art and earth science still continue? Will the honor society function? Will the honor society function? The answer is yes. And again, I'm watching Mrs. Rothel nod, so I'll let her pick that up from here.
Yeah, earth science and studio and art will absolutely be the same. And I'm going to kind of jump in. There are some kids that are going to say, well, in studio and art, I was allowed to eat. I am not going to take that away. You are still allowed to eat in studio and art. We'll just make sure that, again, social distancing, we'll have barriers on the tables. There'll be areas where those kids can eat. So there'll be a stepping away or sitting away from kids when they have to have lunches. Earth science, I know that Mrs. Johansson has talked about making sure that labs sometimes can be done virtually, because there are labs that required for that earth science Regents class. That will be taken care of. And then the third one, which other class was that they were asking about?
The studio and art, earth science, and the honor society.
Oh, so honor society, yes. The only thing we may not have an induction is I was trying to do a personal induction in October. We'll have to see how things play out in October, but I will be asking certain students to help out also with touring of the school when we do the orientation. We will be setting up maybe 4 or 5 kids that will be in the building at that time just to help with kids getting around. So they will be still doing activities as best as they can, or they'll be doing things by Google Meet with Mrs. Hughes for any honor society activities.
Okay, hi Ronnie, this is a good question. During lunch periods, will kids be assigned a seat, or will seats be marked as available to be chosen? And I'm going to speak to it, and Mrs. Rothel, you can modify as you see fit. Much like we're doing on the buses, you're loading from, as you're the first person on the bus, you're going to go to the back. This is going to be a back to front situation so that you have as little student passing or contact as possible. I would have to assume that that's going to be the same process in our cafeteria, somebody directing students to desks, and I'll let you pick that up from here, Mrs. Rothel.
Yeah, I would assume that once you kind of choose a desk, that will be your desk, kind of like in the lunchroom when we had in the last year, you would find a table. That was a table you sat at, and kids would sit at the same table. As you enter, I know there's 2 ways to come into the cafeteria. So depending on which way you come down the hallway, the way the seats will be filled. But I would probably say that we're going to stick with, once you find a chair or a table seat that's yours, that will be yours every lunch period, just to keep with consistency so the kids aren't changing and trying to find a different seat. So we will kind of have an assigned seat at the beginning.
And understand that every facility in this building, and it makes it somewhat easy because you're in for the most part 1 day per week, possibly 2. Everything will be cleaned and sanitized. We now have the electrostatic fogger in every building that will supplement the standard thoroughly comprehensive cleaning and sanitization with EPA approved antiviral agents. That electrostatic fogger does a tremendous job as well. The cafeterias, the bathrooms, and the frequently touched surfaces will be attacked on a routine basis more than once per day. So as often as possible, this is going to be, it was the focal point and it will stay that way. Okay, good question. All right, will there be drama club? All right, so the clubs are, I don't want to say they're up in the air. We're going to run as much remotely as we possibly can. There may be certain things that just can't run under the circumstances. We want to put our kids in a position where they're enjoying what they do to the greatest extent possible. We want to try and move back in the direction of whatever that new normal is, and drama club would be part of that. We're going to try and get it going as quickly as possible. I can't promise that it's going to start at the same time it would have under traditional circumstances. I'll also add this, Finley athletics kick in right now. The New York State Public High School Athletic Association, and that includes Section 11, fall sports will not start until at least September 21st. That may not happen either. I need to be a realist about this. They may take all of our sports seasons, push them all back, shorten them. They may not start collectively until January. And that remains to be seen as well. So there's a lot up in the air with that. We certainly hope we can re-engage kids, but you're seeing what's happening out there with some of the college sports, even the professionals. We have to do this with care, so nothing at the very least is going to start before the end of September, and I honestly don't expect that, even that to happen. Okay, Mrs. Rothel, I'm going to defer to you here because I don't think this is online yet. Is there a supply list for incoming grade 7?
No, there is not a supply list or information at this point regarding the supplies, since I know that many of the teachers are kind of revamping what they normally ask students, such as like 2-inch binders and folders and things like that. So I have a feeling that you will be getting a list closer to the start of school, or that those supplies will be limited in what's needed. A Chromebook and basic pens, pencils, paper will be very limited in the needs. But yes, you'll be setting something probably from your teachers once you get into class or just prior to school starting. Hopefully by orientation, we'll have something for supplies.
Okay. All right, I'm going to take the first part of this, and Mrs. Rothel, you're going to take the second part. First part is, our temperatures checked every day? And the answer is absolutely. There should be a double check technically. So we're asking families to do this before they put their children on the bus and follow through with the app report. And we will be scanning them. Everybody, it's not just students, it's students, staff, anybody who enters the building, even essential visitors. And by the way, I should add this, these campuses are not open to anybody who wants to visit or walk in on a daily basis. They will be, for the most part, sealed to that because we can't have people walking in randomly. Employees, contract service providers, and parents with appointments. Obviously, you're part of our school community, but we're going to limit that and make sure that it is done on a scheduled basis as often as possible. But anybody who walks in that building, temperature will be checked. And just recall that that's only one symptom. There are many symptoms. The CDC has a list that's posted. Those symptoms change. I'm not going to say routinely, but they're constantly adding to them. Temperature is but one, and just because you have a temperature doesn't mean you have COVID. However, if you do scan for a temperature that's greater than 100.0 Fahrenheit, you will be sent home and you will be expected to go get that COVID test. And the other piece of this, much different, can a language choice be switched before school starts?
Please reach out to your counselor once the schedule is given. It's easier to switch a 7th grade language. 8th grade languages are much harder because you're 2 years in. So that would be more of a 7th grade issue than an 8th grade question.
Okay. All right, are we going paperless? And I'll answer that generically, to the extent possible. I've been trying to do that for years, and that has nothing to do with the COVID pandemic, but there are times where print materials are needed. And we may have situations where a family has difficulty in terms of access, and we are going to have prepared for them in those situations print materials so that the students can continue on their continue with their academic processes. But in general, you're going to see a lot more digital now than you will on paper. How do we get on an email list? So that comes directly from our student management system. So on a daily basis, it's actually quite simple in terms of how this works, but it still means you have to contact either the building or the district registrar, and you can email me if you're having trouble with this. But everybody everybody on this call right now who is registered in the district should be getting emails, should be getting texts, and when sent, phone calls. If you're not, you need to let me know. Every day, that list, that student list, is uploaded into our Blackboard system. So our student management system speaks to our Blackboard system, which is our robocall, robotext, robo-email system. If you're not getting an email, I've had some parents call here and they may have inadvertently opted out. I can take you off that opt-out and make sure that you're getting what you need. So please don't hesitate to contact me. I can't tell
And
who
just a little side note too, sometimes the emails that specifically that I sent, I know go to your spam. So always check there just to see if you're getting them, because it's a bulk email. Your email may send it there first, and you just have to tell them that it's a friendly email, then you'll begin getting them every week. And as I said, every Sunday night, there is an update that is sent out. So you do want to look for that.
Okay, and this, I would take care of this automatically, but this person is identified as iPhone, so I can't see who it is. Okay. When are the children getting their Chromebooks, and do they bring them to school every day? So the majority should have them already from last year. If there is a problem with that Chromebook, or if you are new to the district, that's a different story. So that should be something that's worked through the orientation process, Mrs. Rothel.
Mm-hmm.
But
We do have a website, the Chromebooks.com, the
Right.
Chromebooks UFSD. We have you reach out to that. We'll put that into a letter to let you know if you're new to the district, to let them know that you need a device, and we can either have it for you ready on orientation, or it can be delivered to you or picked up and be waiting for you on the first day of school. So you will get a device if you don't have one at this time.
So as Mrs. Rothel mentioned, that also applies if you have a Chromebook that needs repair or replacement. We have devices, we have plenty of devices that are available. The Chromebooks it is in the plan as well, Chromebooks@hufsd.edu is the email. But if you have a broken Chromebook, you may not be able to email. The phone number is in the plan as well. It's 631-812-2381. If I spoke too quickly, it is in the plan, so please don't hesitate. Both of those options, the email address as well as the phone number, they will open on August 24th. And we move quickly. If you need something, we're going to get it to you. And do they bring them to school every day? Yes, they do need them to bring them to school on the days that they're in.
Fully charged, please. That helps.
Yes, absolutely. And if you have a problem with a charger, you can also email or call that phone number. There may be nobody at the other end of the phone number to take the call. At the time you call, please leave student name and the issue that you have that you're facing. All right, this is for you, Mrs. Rothel. When will the remind code go out?
That one I'm still going to work on. The remind code probably won't start until the very beginning of school, sometime in September. So the Sunday night emails will start, and the information will be in a Sunday night email. And again, at orientation, I need to set that up. I'm much better at the Sunday night emails. The remind me is definitely a high school thing, but I do want to add it to part of my communication, considering that this is a daily need for updating parents with things that are happening in the building.
Okay, will children with LD services still be receiving services when they are working from home and when in school on scheduled days? All right, so this is, it's an IEP question, and understand that throughout this process, regardless of where the child is, if you choose full remote, if you're hybrid, or if we're back at school collectively at some point, IDEA requirements, Part 200 requirements, commissioner regulations are still in place, and we will have to make sure that every child with an IEP receives the full range of services. There are some options to provide some services remotely. I do not want to speak for the special education department here. This is an individual student-by-student, case-by-case basis. If there is an issue with services, I wholeheartedly encourage you to promptly contact Mrs. Roth or Mrs. Rich to make sure that we are providing exactly what we need to provide. We have a spectacular staff to begin with, but our special education department does not miss things. But again, these are trying times, and if there is a concern, please do not hesitate to call either one of those individuals. I think Mrs. Roth would be the first contact there, or the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, will cohorts include both 7th and 8th graders? And if so, will each grade be divided by floor? I will start that. Mrs. Rothel, you can add to it. Yes, the cohorts will be split. It will include both 7th and 8th graders. We're not going to split 7th and 8th grade, having 7th on one day, 8th on the other. There are some challenges with grades divided by floor because there are some rooms that are specialized in specific areas of the building. So while scheduling can accommodate that to a certain degree, it is not going to be an exact science. And I don't know if you want to add to that, Mrs. Rothel.
Yes, so core classes for 8th grade, any of those will be upstairs. Core classes for 7th grade, those will be downstairs. Foreign language are all upstairs, doesn't matter your grade level. And the tech classes, fax classes, and band rooms are all specific. So those will then be based on where the classroom is. It will not be grade level specific, but at least 4 of those classes each day will be divided within 8th grade upstairs and 7th grade downstairs.
And science labs, I assume, should be thrown in there as well.
Yes, we have both seventh grade upstairs, downstairs, and the eighth grade science labs are upstairs. So we have done a nice job with at least those core classes staying on a certain level of the building.
Okay, so as you can see, the idea here is to really prevent commingling of cohorts to the extent possible, and that's even within a cohort. So, you know, to keep the kids as contained as possible. It is more challenging at the middle school and high school when the kids are moving about a little bit more. And again, that is why we're starting with 4 cohorts at the secondary level and 2 at the elementary level.
And just to piggyback on that, seventh graders will only have 2 lunch periods, and eighth graders will have 2 lunch periods. So there will be no mingling between grade levels either when it comes to lunches. So if there's an issue in any sense, it's only 2 periods of seventh grade and 2 periods of eighth grade. There again, we are keeping those cohorts apart from each other and not mixing them together.
Okay. Question about the time frame between each phase. Some of these questions go back a little time here. This one's about an hour old, so I did answer that already. That'll depend on the 3 factors I discussed before. Right. Also a concern about have not received emails. Again, please, you can let me know that because I can go in myself and make sure that you're getting the communications. One of the most important things that we can be doing, that we are doing right now, is making sure that anybody and everybody is in the loop. So the email communications, the text, any phone calls, we need to make sure that you have updated information in our eSchool student management system and that there is no inadvertent opt-out anywhere in there. Okay, the question here is, when will transportation be addressed? I'm not sure exactly what part of transportation, but I will speak to it. There is a section in the plan on this. Transportation, let me hit it from every angle here as best I can. 2 types of buses in the district. There is the 66 capacity large bus on a general basis in terms of children, and a van. We are working with same social distancing requirements on a bus that we would be working with in the school building. The bus is an extension of the classroom. Okay, so load factors, large bus will be capped at 22 riders on any given day, and I mentioned sort of how we'll load and unload those buses. That may be impacted, I'll get to that in a second. That may be impacted by families that have more than 1 child in a household. That may increase it to maybe a maximum of 23 or 24 because they can sit in the same seat, but in general, that max capacity will be 22, and these routes are already being mapped out. On a van, the max is 8. The expectation, of course, is for every child to be wearing a mask. If there is a child on the bus without a mask, that may reduce the load, the maximum load that can be carried on that day. So a child arrives at a bus stop, does not have a mask. What happens then? We are purchasing and we are providing Huntington Coach with a large supply of masks so the drivers can actually hand the mask to a student that's getting on without it. These are surgical masks that will be provided. So nobody should be without a mask unless it's on a van, a student with special needs who has a respiratory issue and cannot be wearing the mask. And in a situation like that, the load factor will be reduced. It may be a 2 or 3. These are the situations that we'll have to address on a case-by-case basis. In terms of cleaning and sanitizing after every route, there will be a thorough cleaning of the bus, and there will be an even more thorough cleaning of the bus at the end of every day. And there are, in many buses, ventilation systems that are built into the roofs of the buses. Those will be fully operational. Attendance will be taken on the buses. As mentioned, that's part of an important part of a contact tracing process. I think I've covered all bases there. Dr. Acker, can you add anything?
Nope, you've covered it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. What will be done to help those students who have a hard enough time focusing in class, let alone remotely? You know, I'm going to let Mrs. Rothel handle that in a second, but I do want to mention something that I don't think I've touched upon yet. You know, this has been a very difficult time for students, for staff, for you as family members, for our community, for the region, state, world, etc. We have kids coming back that have experienced things that some of us haven't. The trauma we've all experienced some degree of trauma here. This is not going to be an easy transition from what we've experienced for the last 5-6 months to what we're going to be putting in place in September. So our staff is well aware of the fact that the initial focus has to be on come back in. We got to make you feel comfortable. We have to make ourselves feel comfortable. there may be days, there may be times at the beginning of the school year where we just spend the minutes of a period simply talking to the kids and letting them express themselves and just getting to know each other again. One of the things we had the benefit of in the spring, and I say this very loosely because I don't know if there was any benefit to the spring, but the kids knew the teachers, they knew each other, they knew their peers. So when we flipped the switch and went to remote, there were familiar faces there. That helped. That is not necessarily going to be the case come September. We are well aware of our intent and responsibility to help the kids and all of us ease back into this in the right way. So that's how we start, and we'll do that for as long as necessary. We've also spent a lot of time altering curricula so that, for example, we have a brand new math program in place. The 7th graders got shortchanged last year in the spring. We did the best we could. They're now going to be jumping into Algebra 1. There may be some additional time spent reviewing topics that may not be focal points under normal circumstances. So student social emotional well-being, I push that up toward the front of the plan for a reason. Understand that it will be a focus, and it's not just students, it's staff, it's parents, it's family members. We have a lot of work to do together here, and I'm going to get emotional, but the bottom line is we have to do this together. We need to keep the lines of communication open, and we need to make sure that we're taking care of our kids and families, and that we're taking care of our staff here. So please understand our commitment here, and this is how this plan was designed, and any changes we make will be designed to further that or move us further in that direction. So sorry for going off script there, but I just thought it needed to be mentioned. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Mrs. Rothel, about focusing.
No, you've actually said exactly what I would say. Teachers are very much been told and reminded that this is all about making sure the connections with the kids, the relationship with the kids is the more important. The curriculum will come. It's for everybody involved. The teachers need it, the students need it, and as Mr. Polanski pointed out, they don't know who's in their class. They're not going to see their whole class at any point for a while. So that will be really working to have some cohesiveness in the classroom, really getting to know the kids, which is the most important, and the kids getting to know each other, especially because we have Woodhull and STEM kids coming together for the first time. So these kids don't know each other. They may not have met these children before. So I agree 100%. We're going to work on the social emotional and really building those relationships first. The curriculum will be there. We will get to it, but it will not be our main focus for the first couple weeks of school.
Thank you, Mrs. Rothel. I think you addressed this already, but will there be extra help after school still on cohort days?
Only virtually. All extra help will be done virtually, and then the teacher will set up either a Tuesday or a Thursday, and they will let you know that information for logging on.
And that virtual concept applies to meetings as well. So we're going to be speaking to our staff about virtual meetings as well. And we have obviously parent concerns that come up. The default setting is we will conduct those meetings in a virtual manner unless it requires an in-person presence, and we'll deal with that as those situations as they arise. All right, for children that require resource room or daily direct instruction IEP for a specific subject on a daily basis be met. And again, as I mentioned before, any outlined requirement or accommodation that's built into an IEP will be met. And there are different accommodations that can be made along the lines of IDEA or Part 200 regulations. Those will be discussed with you. Nothing's going to happen haphazardly here. So this is all going to involve conversation between a parent and teacher, parent and chairperson. But again, if you believe that there is something that requires attention on an IEP, do not hesitate to initiate that communication. Okay, this is actually a very good question, and they're all good questions, but this one hasn't been asked before. When are we starting school? I'm going to start to press this date home. We did modify the calendar slightly for students, more so for staff. So the way we were initially situated, we were going to have a conference day for all staff on Thursday, September 3rd, and bring the kids in on Tuesday, September 8th. That has been changed. We're going to start, the children will start on Wednesday, September 9th, and the staff will be coming in on Thursday, September 3rd, Friday, September 4th, and Tuesday, September 8th. That will involve one of the things I'm coordinating for either the Friday or Monday. As I mentioned, I've been in communication with Huntington Hospital and the Northwell folks. I have them coming in to work with our nurses. I have them coming in to work with our classroom teachers. I have them coming to work with our staff as a whole. So That'll be a part of the training. I also need to give them time to work together, collaborate, et cetera. There's going to be some grade level planning involved. A lot of this is going to be looking differently than they left it, even in the spring, with respect to our synchronous, asynchronous process. So I need to do my very best work to support my staff so that they can support your kids on a daily basis. And we are here to support the kids in different ways throughout the year as well. So that's where I go back to that social emotional learning process. Okay. On non-attendance days, how will the remote days look? Ms. McCoy, I think you addressed that, but I'll let you go through that process again as well.
So students at home will log in on a period by period basis. All of the classroom links will be in the Clever app. Clever is something we've been using at the elementary schools for the past few years. It was also introduced in the secondary schools last year. All students will receive their Clever login information, which will also be accessible in the parent portal of eSchool. It is the student's email address with their student ID number as the password for the most part, and they'll be able to see the links to their classes in that app. So everything will be in one place so that they can access their class links.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good question. What form are you referencing if you want to have your child go full remote? What I'm going to do is I'm going to send another communication out. Today is Thursday. I make either tomorrow or Monday with the link to that form. It was actually in the letter that was blasted home. I believe it was on July 31st. There is a link in that letter to the form. You do not have to fill out that form unless you are interested or looking for your child to be on a 5-day remote in a 5-day remote setting. Okay, and there is a question there that asks for your commitment a month, a quarter, half the year, or more. And that is what we are using for our planning purposes. Now the question came up. I haven't seen it here, but what if there are X number of students at a grade level? Would that lead to a remote teacher being set aside just for the kids who are at home and not the kids who are in school on a daily basis? That is a lot more difficult to coordinate on the secondary level when the students are in 8-9 period day format. So it may be possible on an elementary level, and we are open to that. I've spoken to the elementary parents about this, but it is a little challenging for us because, for example, we have 4 primary schools, so the sections have to break. I will say, and this is an important point, a lot of the expenses that have been incurred here have gone over and above what we budgeted for them. A lot of things have come up, and these are first and foremost priorities. We've got to keep our staff and students safe. But I can tell you, one of the luxuries we don't have right now is to continue to add staff. It's just not there. We're going to make good use of who we have here, and we're going to add where we can. But a lot of what we've done here has been somewhat addressed or compromised by the amount of money that we've had to spend on some of the PPE and safety mechanisms, which are absolutely worth every penny. Okay. All right, can you review transportation? Will there be buses that we handled already? Okay, as lockers will not be used, is there a size restriction for backpacks? I don't think we've really discussed that. Mrs. Rothel, do you want to add to that?
I would say the smaller the better. I mean, you can have a backpack, but please realize that the kids will be taking them from class to class and carrying them all day. So I think the smaller the backpack or the more user-friendly it would be what I would recommend. So it's really a kid's comfort level, but you don't need one that's going to need to fit tons of materials in it.
Okay, thank you. The beautiful boxer was distracting me for a minute. I apologize.
Oh, I saw him too. He's adorable.
Yes.
He's gone now.
Okay. Is there any thought to holding some classes outside when possible? And we will encourage that. Obviously, it's not always going to be possible, but holding class outdoors, again, along the lines of social distancing, mask wearing, there is no reason that that can't happen, and that'll be a building level decision, and Mrs. Rothel will be involved in that on an ongoing basis.
Our PE classes are definitely going to try to get outside every day as long as the weather is good. Some of our chorus classes may go outside, even band or something where those kids need to have that social distancing. It's always better to be outside than inside, or just to get out for a breather. So it's going to definitely be an option for teachers if they do want to go outside.
Okay, the criteria to move from phase 1 to phase 2, we've addressed that already. Will there be after-school sports such as tennis in the fall? Address that. Will clubs run to the greatest extent practicable, some virtual? Will there
Yes, some may go virtual.
And where clubs can run virtually, we have budgeted stipends in there for club advisors as well as materials to go along with it. So, you know, we want the kids to be as engaged as possible. So we're going to do what we can. Will there be chorus? Yes. I mentioned the 12-foot distancing there. Assuming band and orchestra are being handled the same. Yes and no. The difference there obviously is we're going to be creative here because the large, massive symphonic type ensembles may have to be modified a little bit.
We have a little bit of help with the orchestra, does not have the blowing part, such as the band, so orchestra can continue with the 6 feet, where the band and the chorus have to have the 12. So those may look a little different and have different locations, but our orchestra is definitely, can have wear the mask throughout the entire class if need be.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry I didn't hear. When is the orientation for the incoming 7th graders? Do you want to reiterate that?
That is the Wednesday before, I believe September 2nd is the date, if off the top of my head. I apologize, I don't have my calendar in front of me. It's either the 2nd or the 1st. Mr. Cusack has one and I have the other.
You have the Wednesday? That's the 2nd. He has the 1st. Okay. That's Tuesday.
Okay.
So Wednesday,
yeah, so I have the
September 2nd, and you will be sending out communication on that.
Correct, because there will be different days depending on different times depending on your cohort. It will be that day, but you may be the morning or the afternoon. But you'll get that information as we get closer.
Great, thank you. All right, any guidance on middle school sports? It does the same guidance there for high school sports applies to middle school sports. Right now, nothing starts before September 21st. I cannot guarantee that that's even going to happen. It may be pushed into January. As soon as we have information there, we will disseminate it. This is a common mistake we make as educators. The question is, what's LGI? We assume that everybody knows the acronyms that we throw out there. That is the large group instruction room. That is essentially Finley's auditorium. I do it all the time, and we do apologize.
Yes.
Okay, what will be in place to assist with social distancing from the bus to the classrooms, then in the halls between classes, then at dismissal to the bus? All right, I think Dr. Acker addressed the signage and markers. We are at this time, I can tell you all over the district, we are setting up classrooms, we are putting up signage, we are laying down markers, we are doing everything possible to help us help the kids understand what the expectations are. And again, this is not going to be simple. This is not going to be the children arrive day 1, staff come in on September 3rd, and everybody knows exactly what this is going to look like and how it's going to progress. So we're being realists here. We think we have something in place that's going to be maximizing safety, but there is going to have to be some pressure testing involved. And again, I go back to the fact that there are 750 kids in Findlay. Typically, we'll be working with 150, between 150 and 180 in the building on a given day, so we can make sure that what we are putting in place is going to be effective. I've got to protect our families here and protect our staff. One thing can happen that can shut this down very quickly, and we don't want it to be something that's within our control, but we're going to do the best we can. And obviously, if something happens, we'll react to it. But the cohort process is an important piece of what we're doing.
And just to add to that, just in prior times, if you've been to Findlay, there is one entrance where everybody comes in. That will no longer take place. There will be 3 different ways for kids to come in and 3 different ways for kids to exit. So on that point, if you take that 150 to 180, that means that there's only about 50 kids leaving at a given time. Therefore, that should be spreading kids out, reducing the fact that kids should be congregating or groups of people leaving at the same time. So just be aware that that will help with that social distancing in the hallways and during entering and exiting of the building.
Maximum amount of students per classroom. As mentioned before, that's 15, but most classes will be much less than that because of the 4 cohort model. Mrs. Rothel, I don't think we hit this in detail. If we're dropping children off at school, what will be the protocol?
So the protocol is going to be that we'll be in the back of the building. Students will be dropped off. And as I said before, that we will not be accepting students before 7:30 because there will be no one to man the door to make sure that kids are in an area where they can be socially distanced. I don't want kids standing outside. And from that point, they'll come in and we'll have them in a waiting area, probably the cafeteria, because we can hold up to 60 kids. And then at 7:50, they'll be released to their classrooms. Students will be getting off the buses between 7:45 and 7:50 also and being released directly to classrooms. We'll they'll start the day. They will not be needing to go to lockers or congregating in the hallways directly to classrooms. That's the plan.
And again, concern here is distance between children as they come into the building, and we're going to do everything we can to keep that distance at the 6 feet where it needs to be. Realistically speaking, there are going to be times when children are inadvertently within that 6 foot distance, and that's where those masks come in. So
Yes.
masks take, and listen, we've all been reading about this since who knows when. Masks make a difference here, and I'm listening to what's going on in certain places and the resistance to wearing the masks. I can't tell you what to do on a personal basis, but when they're in school, this is a clear as day safety precaution to make sure that we are containing any aerosol particulate spray. So that applies to walking in and walking out of the building, and buses. Buses are an extension of the classroom.
And as you know, mentioned in the plan is the district is supplying every student with a 2-ply cloth mask, which will be mailed to your home prior to the start of school. So they will have that mask in their possession prior to getting on a bus or coming into the building.
And actually, thank you, Dr. Acker. That was something we discussed recently, talking about the masks. We have the supply here, but the last thing we want happening is for everybody to show up on the first day waiting to pick up the masks while they're entering the school building. So this is another unanticipated cost. We are going to send those masks home so you have them before day one, and we will certainly have masks available on buses should they be needed. Okay. If things change and you need busing or an intermittent need for a bus, how do I go about requesting? So busing, just to make this clear, one of the things we have not done, I think there was one survey question about transportation. It was really more for our own thought process, but the law requires that we provide a seat for every student who is eligible for busing based on district determined limits, and that's voter approved X number of years ago. So if you are eligible for a bus, we have to keep that seat for you. So if you're not using it, there may come a point where we say, are you not using the bus? Are you driving your children to school on a daily basis? Bottom line is, that's just going to make more room on the bus for others, and that's a good thing. So we certainly encourage you to drive if that's what you'd like to do, but your bus seat will always be there if you're eligible for it. Okay, so if there is, you shouldn't need to request the bus, it should be provided for you automatically. And that information will come from our transportation office, much as it has every other year.
Yep.
Okay, will all the teachers be required to do face-to-face with remote learning? Yes, it's a combined process. Every class will be live streamed, so when the teacher is doing that face-to-face, the kids at home will be able to see exactly what's going on in the classroom and hear it as well.
I just want to clarify, though, for each of those periods during the day, there will be time that students will work independently or have some sort of assignment that they may be working on. It will not be a 40-minute lecture. We know that it is not good practice to lecture for 40 minutes, and we do not expect students to pay attention for 40 minutes directly and sit at a screen. So whatever the content area is, there will be activities and things that students will be doing at home where perhaps they'll have an opportunity to do something off the screen, in a notebook, those types of things. We want to continue to utilize all the modalities that we know we should be with our students.
Okay, just to add a comment there, because I think the same person, the comments come quickly, so I'm at around 7:22 in the timeline here, so if you haven't heard yours yet, you know when you put it in. It looks like the same person indicated that last year that was not the case for a lot of teachers. The schedule now will be different than it was in the spring. So in the spring, there was an hour of synchronous learning per subject area, and then it was a little bit more flexible in terms of posting assignments and office hours, etc. I understand, and I've had conversations with parents who actually like that because their students are easily adapting to that and are comfortable with that. The majority of kids need the structure. This is going to be a period-by-period schedule. You're essentially in school while you're at home. So it's going to be I'm not going to say significantly different, but I guess we can call it significantly different process than we had instituted last spring. Periods 1 through 9, following it from 7:55 or 7:50 to the end of the school day. So there will be that consistency, and also consistency in terms of the platform used. Google Classroom, Meets, etc. I know there was some concern about some variation there. That variation will be less in every building. And I think I connected those two questions appropriately. There are two in between there. What is the plan for fall sports? We addressed that. And will they switch classrooms? We addressed that. Okay. New York City is using saliva tests for all residents. Is there any thought of using saliva testing for students at school in any frequency? So one of the things that happened over the past couple of weeks is the governor got up one morning and he started to talk about testing, and that schools need to do testing, and you need to post your testing plans, and you need to test. Understand that we cannot engage in testing on site unless we are approved as a limited service laboratory, and we do not have the healthcare personnel or the facility to do that. So we cannot do testing on site. One of the things, and I'll mention this as well, I think a number of you have read over the frequently asked questions document. One of the elementary parents the other night said, well, if you post a new question or add a question to that, can you flag it as new so we don't have to read through the whole document again? And didn't think of it, an excellent question, and I have done that. So as I add questions, please review it periodically. If there's something significant, I'll communicate it to you directly. I'll give you an example of the latest question I asked there and also incorporate it into the plan in terms of masks. Somebody asked about neck gaiters. No go. Okay, they've got to be 2-ply cloth masks. They've got to be surgical masks. If you want an KN or N95 mask, you can wear it. But neck gaiters have certainly surfaced as not protective enough for a child to wear in a school setting. And the neck gaiter, if you don't know what that is, it looks like a legging that goes, it kind of looks like a turtleneck that stretches up and reaches over your face. These have to be appropriately situated masks. And if the mask is not appropriate, we'll have replacements to provide the student. We don't want this to become an issue. So if a student has the wrong thing, we'll give them the right thing. Okay. How many students in a cohort? I think we hit that one, about 150 to 180 in the school on a given day. Sports we addressed. They can carry backpacks, but where will they put coats? Did you mention the desks, Mrs. Rothel?
I don't think I specifically mentioned that. What we're going to have is we'll have desks that are in between the desks that the kids sit in. So there'll be a student sitting somewhere. There'll be a desk that will be empty. There'll be a student. There'll be a desk that be empty. And those desks can be used for students to place their book bags on. They can always put them on the back of their chair. They can put coats on the back of their chair. So we are designating at least an extra desk for each kid in the classroom, and also providing them with the back of the chair depending on the size of their backpack or their jacket.
Thank you. Okay, I think we talked about passing time, correct? Sports we talked about. And how often will mask breaks be taken and for how long? The kids are used to short periods by now, but not all day long. So the idea is to provide frequent but short mask breaks. And some of that will have to be dictated by the teachers, and we have to lay out those expectations early on. As I mentioned, a nice rule of thumb, if they are stationary, listen, we've worked so hard to get away from that industrial revolution model with desks and rows and columns. We're going back to that, and they're going to have these 3-sided translucent barriers on them, and it's going to look a little institutional, and we don't love it, but this is what's going to keep us safe. We've got to make a positive out of this. So when they're situated there, that may be the time where you can alternate row, column, etc. Taking masks off, it would be column because the sides of the barriers would be preventive there. But they can be taken frequently, but the idea is default setting, mask on. And again, Mrs. Rothel, I assume you'll address that more with your students as they come in by cohort.
Yes, and discussing that with the teacher so that they know what they're supposed to do within classes during periods. And as we said, independent time, whereas teachers are sitting down or kids are just working independently, that will be a mask break also.
Thank you. All right. How will students at home get help daily with lessons? How will questions be answered during class period lessons? I think we addressed it. Anything you'd like to add there, Mrs. Rothel?
No, I think the kids will have to go to those extra help sessions that are after school. They'll have to reach out to those teachers as they normally would, or ask those questions, because they will be with their teachers 5 days a week, maybe only 1 day physically, but 5 days they're able to get contact and ask questions of their teachers during those periods every day.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. How many students per each classroom? Again, max 15, but probably considerably less than that in many situations because of the 4 cohorts. How will new students have any social interaction with others to meet others? That's a really good question, and I know we do have a number of new students that have registered over the summer that are joining us as 7th or 8th graders. And what I will say there, and you can chime in here, Mrs. Rothel, is if you have concerns about that or you need help specifically, we want to be attuned to that, but it's also, there's so much going on please pick up the phone or drop an email and let us know how we can help there, and we will help make that happen. So that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. If we can do a little bit more to help that new student, we're going to do it. And we've always done it that way, but with so much to focus on, please don't hesitate to reach out. That's an important part of the communication process.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And also those guidance counselors and our support staff could definitely help making sure the kids make those connections, and just speaking with the teacher. It'll be nice for those kids that are in those small groups to really get close to each other. Those cohorts will be with each other. That's a great way to form a beginning of a relationship and branch out as we get hopefully moving from phase 2 to phase 3. Fingers crossed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, where am I here? All right, since the additional 40 minutes are worked in for class locker switching, how is that time used up otherwise, since there won't be typical locker changes? So the time is still needed for movement, and certainly in a socially distant manner, there may be some learning that has to take place there. Yes, it won't be typical locker changes. So I still think some of that time is needed. Will there be time needed to unpack and pack lockers? No, but the schedule itself, I believe, is going to be the same as it always has been. Correct, Mrs. Rothel?
And just, yeah, and sometimes those moving between classrooms, kids do not stop at their lockers between every period. They're supposed to only go to their lockers in the beginning of the day, before or after a lunch period, and the end of the day. It's not built in so kids can stop at their lockers between every period. It's for them to get to their class and have that time to make it through the hallways. For those kids at home, I would assume it's for them to take a 5-minute break, to get a drink of water, to just get themselves, you know, to move, to stand up and stretch, because they've been sitting, they're not walking. They may want to take that stretch break of that 5 minutes. So I think it's a really good thing to have those 5-minute breaks in between each of the classes for those kids to just take a break.
Okay. So just so you know, I do have somebody that is transcribing these questions, so I can kind of look through them and put some additional feedback or question FAQ type information in that document. Appendix E in the plan. Suggestion just came up about dating anything new. So the first group of new items is there. It's all highlighted. You'll see it, but as I put new items in, I'll attach dates to them as well, so you know when they were added. Okay. How many kids per cohort on average? And we talked about that. It's about 150 to 180 depending on the day. This is a good question. Will my child be allowed to also carry their own hand wipes and hand gel to apply during the day if they want to? This has been a lengthy, it seems relatively simple, but it's been a lengthy conversation here. Dr. Acker, do you want to address that?
If a parent feels comfortable with sending their child in with hand sanitizer and gels, that's fine, but the district has purchased many different forms of hand sanitizer, whether it's in the mounted dispenser. We have some individually wrapped wipes in every classroom. If a child wants to grab a wipe at any time, they can. So the need to bring that in is really not there, because we are supplying many of those products that are safe and SED approved, and we're making sure the chemicals that students are allowed to touch, because sometimes you bring a hand sanitizer in, it may not have all the approved chemicals for a child's skin. So the ones that we are providing are approved. So there will be plenty of material for students to have access to on a daily and class by class basis.
You can also understand, and it's not as much of an issue at the middle school level because students understand what they can and what they can't do in most cases. But if you do not want your child using alcohol-based sanitizer, and that's an issue, you need to let us know, because obviously preferred to that regardless is a full, thorough hand washing. I know Appendix C in the plan looks a little elementary in nature, but it really does show what a good solid hand washing should look like. So, and believe me, I demonstrated it myself in front of my 24-year-old who decides that hand washing must be a 2-second process. We need to take that piece of our day seriously in terms of making sure that our hands are clean and all respiratory etiquette protocol are followed.
And that is part of the plan too, right? The training of students and staff, you know, what good hand washing looks like, what good hygiene looks like. So there will be, you know, teachers will be discussing that with the students so they understand, you know, the best way to keep themselves safe.
Okay, thank you. All right, how will you handle situations where kids don't follow the mask rules? And we're gonna, certainly ask for your help there if needed to get the message across. I'll speak to a last resort here, and please understand that this is not a default setting, as I keep mentioning. We need to work with these children to get them understanding how important it is, how to do it, how to understand when and where to take a mask break, to understand when they're moving about the building, those masks must be worn, et cetera, et cetera. If there is a child or a student that is that uncomfortable wearing a mask and just can't do it, we do have another option, and that is a full remote setting at this point. Not wearing a mask, I'm going to say it bluntly, it puts everybody else at risk. Okay, so please keep that in mind, and that's going to jump me right into the next question. So any cough, sneeze, even if you feel is allergy related, kids should stay home. Listen, we're adults here, and we have to evaluate our own children before we put them on a school bus or drop them off at school. I walked in this morning, I sneezed. That does not mean I have to take myself home and quarantine myself or stay out of the office for X number of days. You have to rely on a symptom, okay? A simple sneeze is not a symptom, but cold-like symptoms, that's something we need to take very seriously. So in the past, you might have sent your child to school with what you believe is the common cold. That cannot be the case anymore. So if there is a symptom that matches anything on that list that I've attached to the plan and also linked, there's a CDC link in there. I'm going to go back to that word again, and I apologize for it. The default setting is you need to keep your child home. Okay, and I know it may be inconvenient, but heaven forbid that it is more than an allergy. I am not a medical health care provider. Neither are most of you. That's for a doctor to determine. We can't do that diagnosis and make an assumption. So please, again, if your child is not feeling well, you need to keep them home, and they need to follow protocol. There is outlined in the plan. All of those conditions must be met before they return to school. Okay. If someone is sick in one cohort, does it affect the others or shut down the whole building? Just to go back to that, it's a good question. The whole idea of the cohort process, if a Tuesday student tests positive, that will affect the Tuesday cohort. What happens then is we scrub down that building. We go at it from top to bottom. It should not necessarily impact Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday cohorts. So while I know it might not be ideal for all, that there's limited time in the building per week, it also does protect the other cohorts by doing it this way. And like I said, for us to get through a year without this happening at some point, I just don't see it happening. At some point, some building is going to get hit with a positive test, and it is going to impact a classroom, a wing, or a building. But the more cohorts there are, the less total number it's going to impact. Okay, does the fresh air requirement by New York State meet how we can be sure most unit ventilators are old and do not work? All right, so just to elaborate on what we talked about before, we are, again, hands and knees measuring square footage of rooms and also knowing how many students are going to be in a classroom at any given time. We are capable of measuring the airflow in a classroom. This is going to be an ongoing process. We're not going to use a room right now that doesn't have proper ventilation or adequate airflow. And we are going to be looking at our air handling systems and our filters routinely. They're going to be replaced on a very regimented, scheduled basis. If there is an issue with a room at any point, we will shut it down and we will move those in that room to another space. But right now we are comfortable with what we have open, and there is space enough to handle everything in the building.
I also want to mention that our architects have gone throughout our buildings, and honestly, if you don't have the right ventilation, you can't get a certificate of occupancy. The school would be shut down. So the architects have gone through every single building and checked every single unit, and we are in compliance.
Thank you. All right, Ileana, you okay? All good? Okay. I see you
Jim, I just want to
smiling.
let you know that Beth is muted.
She thinks I did it on purpose. I did not. Okay, Ileana, can you give me a thumbs up that everything's okay over there? Thank you. All right. Thank you for the thanks. I do appreciate it. We have been working hard. This has been around the clock kind of thing, and we understand that perfection is impossible here, but we're really trying to make it as close to that as we can possibly be, and we're listening. So please understand that we are here. Thank you very much. This is a good question. Will there be lockdown drills? So there is a section of the plan that addresses lockdown drills. It addresses fire drills. So the required drills, as per New York State, will be held. They will be modified under general circumstances. We may do things a little bit differently. So I'll speak to the lockdown for a minute. You know how that works. We go into lockdown. The kids crowd into the corner of a classroom so they can't be seen. The window in the door is blocked, and they're off to the side, kind of tucked in, lights off. Nobody knows they're there. Right. So that has 7 children in a cohort in a classroom on top of each other for X number of minutes. So what we can do in that situation is go through everything in a socially distant manner and describe to the children what would happen very carefully if this were a true reason for a lockdown, what they would do in that situation, age-appropriate manner. Family kids are fairly ready to handle, you know, a true lockdown drill scenario. Describe what would happen, talk about it, have the interactive dialogue, but bury in them the understanding that if we were ever in a real situation, that would be the time when social distancing goes out the window. Okay, so this is real. You get in that corner. We'll deal with what the virus brings to us. Right now, we have a more imminent concern. So there are ways to run these drills in an alternative manner that still gets the message across, and that would apply to shelter in place, to a hold in place, to lock out, lock down, etc. But understand the drills will still be held, and we will do them in a manner that still has that same fidelity that we've always done. Okay. The online learning will mirror as best as possible what would happen in the building, and will it be required for students to have their faces shown on Zoom? I'm going to let Ms. McCoy is not muted here. I'm going to let her finish this, but please understand. Listen. I don't always feel comfortable with my face out there. I hate looking at it, but that's beside the point. The idea is students may or may not feel comfortable with their video on. They don't have to have it on. There are plenty of parents on tonight that I can just see names, or it says iPhone. Listen, we want the participation. It does not require that a face be shown at all times. I don't know if you want to add to that, Ms. McCoy.
I just want to say that in some of our subcommittee meetings, there was a concern that you know, teachers just want to make sure that the student is still present on the other side of that camera. So whether their face is shown or they ask for a check-in at times during the class to make sure the student is present, teachers may have different expectations for that, but I don't think anyone would require that the video is on throughout the entire lesson, but there may be some check-in times that they ask for.
Okay. All right, coming from a student point of view, parent question from a student point of view. If the state is now allowing people to go to public restaurants and eat inside a building without a barrier, why can't we? This is leading me to think that going to school is not safe. Socialization is a necessity to students in school and life in general. Barriers will not allow that. And understand that what we are doing is in an abundance of caution. This is not a suggestion that going to school is not safe by any stretch. But understand that we are just trying to make sure that we are preventing the spread of those aerosol particulates to the greatest extent possible. All right. In general, we are dealing with 11, 12-year-old children. And once we get to a point where we feel comfortable, maybe that is something that we can adjust in the plan. But certainly to start, we are going to do this with the precautionary principle in place. So it is not meant to impact socialization. It is meant to improve and enhance safety. But again, as I mentioned, this is a living, breathing process. And if the kids are doing what we know they can do, then those are things that we can look at as time moves on. All right, is there any thought of outdoor classes, tents with outdoor heaters? Tents have been a little bit of an issue, and I'm going to let Dr. Acker take that because she has looked into this ad nauseum.
Yeah, so SED has right now only approved the use of tents for storage, not for classroom. If you put a tent out there, you'd have to put the proper ventilation, the ventilation we've been talking about. You'd have to have ventilation systems installed, walls installed, and at this point, it's not a feasible, you know, option.
You can use them for storage.
Yep.
So that's, and they're an expense as well. So without being able to use them as classrooms, it's a little bit of an issue. All right, when will class schedules be posted? That we addressed, August 21st. All right, will there be one-way hallways, stairs? And this is going to differ by building. Mrs. Rothel, do you want to address that?
At this point, we're going to keep our hallways with two different sides, with kids being able to walk either way. Stairways will be determined. Some of our stairways have sides already. Our main stairway in the blue zone has a section in the middle, so we can do up and down on both. But maybe by the auditorium, you may find that that's only a downstairs and some of the back stairs. So depending on the size of the stairs, it could be a one-way up or down. But again, some of our areas are wide enough that we can have two-way traffic, as long as kids stay to the side when they're walking up and down the stairs, single file.
And for those that don't know, middle school facilities, Findlay is a very, very unique building, and stairwells are of various widths. So each one of them has to be looked at independently, and Mrs. Rothel knows that. Okay, criteria for entering phase 2. I mentioned that before. It'll be positive test metrics. It'll be the efficacy of our processes, as well as how many students choose virtual, full remote, and are net Gaiters acceptable. I know this was posted before I said it, but they are not. Okay, if a special education student has an aide, will they be with them in the same manner they were during the previous school year? And my answer to that is we will follow all IEP premises. There will be no shortchanging a student's IEP, and we will make the appropriate arrangements for the student. If an aide is required, the aide will be there.
Correct.
Okay. Are shared computers in classrooms, for example, Infotech and others, going to be cleaned after each class? Let me start with that because the other question is not 100% related. Do you want to address that, either Ms. McCoy or Mrs. Rothel, or Dr. Acker, actually, because that involves cleaning. So,
Yeah, so, as far as the, there's nobody cleaning, assigned to be cleaning these devices, but as I said, there's going to be the individually wrapped wipes, that if any child wants to wipe their keyboard down or their desk down, they're more than welcome to grab one of them and use them. They're very heavy duty wipes. They're really nice because I've tested a lot of them. And they're multi-purpose. So you can wipe down a keyboard, you can wipe down a desk, and it's not going to fall apart. So they have the option to do that.
I know Dr. Acker, she has a very unique background. She has a very strong business background, is also a former high school principal. So I know her transition from talking about things instructional to heavy duty wipes has been a interesting transition.
A little different.
Okay. All right. The other part of this is, can teachers answer questions during the lesson for students at home? So this is going to be a progression, and understand that we're going to work with our staff to make sure that they are comfortable and provide them with as much support as they need. So it may start where that's a little bit more difficult, but as time goes on, I think Ms. McCoy's, you might have addressed this, Ms. McCoy. If not tonight, it was another night. The flexibility for a teacher to refocus that camera as we ensure that our technology is doing what it's designed to do, beyond just the smartboard and audio, that will be a process that's facilitated better as time goes on. You want to add to that, Beth?
Yeah, I think, the student will always have the opportunity to put something in the chat to the teacher. The teacher can address, again, when there's downtime, when there's independent work taking place in the class, or perhaps after class. There's also the option that the student could actually participate orally and ask a question that would come through the smartboard to the class. So there will be options for that to take place. But again, we want to give our teachers time to get comfortable with this new environment. We are, asking for them to do something that many of them have not done before. So we want to give them some time and flexibility to get comfortable with it.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, class size, we talked about that. When students are working from home, there will be no live lessons. There will absolutely be live lessons. I think this was asked earlier. Will the students connect to classroom remotely while the teacher is teaching other cohorts? Yes, so the teacher will be teaching the group that's cohort 1 on Tuesday, and all the other 3 cohorts will be zoned in remotely, seeing the lesson live. Okay, this is a good question, and this has been another back and forth on our end. Can you please explain how desks will be cleaned between students in classrooms and the lunchroom? So the lunchroom we're going to have covered from top to bottom. Dr. Acker, do you want to address the classrooms and desks between periods? That is not as easily accomplished.
No, again, it's similar to what I just said regarding the individual wipes that are available. Teachers are also going to have, again, we can't require students or teachers to clean, but if a student wants to wipe their space down, they have the material available to them, as well as the teachers are going to have spray bottles of the same sanitizer that we make in-house, that our foggers use, that they're able to, if they have an area that they're concerned about, that they could spray it down and wipe it down. So there's going to be numerous sanitizing materials available in the classrooms, but as far as getting them sanitized between classes, that's just not possible. But we do have supplies if a student feels uncomfortable and needs to do that.
All right, I do want to commend publicly my buildings and ground staff and Dr. Acker, because we have been out ahead in terms of gathering PPE and stockpiling cleaning supplies. The only thing we have not been able to accomplish at this point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, we have not been able to get those touchless hand sanitizer, and that's more a staff issue than a student issue.
Exactly.
However, we have, I mean, between masks and the temperature scanners, both handheld and the walkthroughs, like I said, they look like the airport scanners that you walk through, but this is specifically for temperature. The foggers, the app, I mean, we've been able to get things that are no longer available in some districts just because we've gotten out ahead of it. And
yeah,
I
we
do
have.
need to commend that group for doing
We're
what
well
they did.
stocked, that's for sure.
Okay. If a student is neuroscience, how is the lab component being completed? That's an excellent question. There's actually a section in the curriculum instruction portion of the plan that addresses that. There is flexibility from the state in terms of how that can be accomplished. So for those who know science, the requirement is 1,200 minutes of hands-on lab time in order to be able to sit for the Regents exam. That has to be hands-on lab time under general circumstances, but now they've allowed us to complement with virtual and remote types of things that may be more online or at home paper and pencil, so that the 1,200 minutes can be completed. So there is flexibility in that area and other areas as well. So we're prepared to address that. Okay, this is a parent new to the district. What is the parent portal? I'm just going to throw out a suggestion to this parent. Please call me in the office tomorrow and let me help you through any questions that would assist you in transitioning into the district. I'll be happy to do that. So please just take a note. You can easily find me on the website. My number is right there. All right, will there be disinfectant wipes in the classrooms to clean the desk area after each period? Again, these questions are a little dated in terms of time. We just addressed that. Studio Art, Earth Science, and Honor Society, we addressed that. Okay, this is a good question. How do AB day classes work now? So Mrs. Rothel, I'm going to put you on the spot there.
So AB classes will be the same. So on Tuesday, 1 week, there'll be an A day. And then the following Tuesday it will be a B day. So kids will work on an A, B day every single day. Sometimes they'll be home on an A day. Sometimes they'll be in school on a B day, but it will run just as if school's in regular session. We're not able to do it like the intermediate and primary, or where you can have like an A day, 2 days in a row, one half and the other half. We're just going to run the building as normal with an A-B day. Hence the Remind Me app and the Sunday night emails, which will have that information so students know which days are gym days, infotech days, music days, and all of those other things that are on that type of schedule.
I'm going to try and move a little bit more quickly here. Our first day of school, that will be for children, September 9th. That's Wednesday, first day of student in-class school. Just mentioned that. Cohort Mondays, Mrs. Rothel will send out that reminder so you know when your cohort is scheduled to be in on the Monday. And why Monday, by the way, just so you know, if you look at the calendar, the first 2 months of the school year have 3 Monday holidays. We didn't want anybody hurt by that. Okay, what if a family member of a student tests positive, but the student is negative? Can they come to school or quarantine for 14 days? So the direct family member, that student has to stay home. But that's not a trigger for contact of a contact. It doesn't mean other students in that student's class now have to quarantine. So my son is in school, I test positive, my son stays home. My son is not a trigger for the other students in that class unless he tests positive as well. I hope that made sense. Right, is it okay to mix and match busing, sometimes using the bus and other times picking up and dropping off, or do we need to decide definitively one way or the other? That seat on the bus is there for you. Whether you need it or not, you can pick up or drop off via automobile anytime you'd like. I can suggest that if you know you're not going to use the bus for an extended period of time, please communicate with our transportation office. It's not something we've necessarily put in writing, but please do understand that it will help us. If a stop is not needed temporarily, we will take it off the list. If a household is contacted by a contact tracer, that's someone in the household who's in contact with a COVID positive person, may or may not have been school related. Does that need to be reported to the school? Any information you provide us with will help us. We are asking you to keep an open communication channel with us. So thank you for that. Will this be on the website so people can go back and listen to this? Absolutely, it's being recorded. That's why, if you'd like to go back, you can hear the first primary school forum. I did a second because it was scheduled for last Thursday and a lot of power was out, so we did it again on Monday. Unfortunately, I am ashamed to admit this, but I forgot to hit the record button for the second primary event. Tuesday night's intermediate event is also online, so this will definitely be posted. It's already being recorded. I know Ms. Rothel mentioned drop-off, but how will student pickup at the end of the day work? You want to attack that briefly, Tracy?
Sure. So the pickup will be the same. If you drop your kid off, wherever you dropped your kid off will also be the pickup. Once again, that will keep those kids spread out. We can have them in the cafeteria if needed, or the gymnasium, holding them, waiting for parents to come for pickup. And buses will be exited between 2 different doors based on where the buses are parked. We will be working on dismissal, possibly calling kids by bus numbers or just letting them know where buses are to tell them which door is the best one for them to go out to keep away with the congregating in the front of the building.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for the nice note here. I appreciate it. On the schedule, it says extra help enrichment, student check-in. Can you address that, Tracy? Because there's a couple of things that could be done during that period.
And which part of the schedule, if you could just give me a little bit more.
At the beginning of the day and in the middle of the day, there is a block that says extra help enrichment, student check-in.
I believe if that's full remote learning, is that correct?
No, it's for it's across the board.
Yeah, so that would be when people are asking for extra help, students have questions or concerns, just checking in, asking how they're doing. Again, the cohorts will be smaller, so teachers will have a chance to just deal with kids that are in school or reaching out to those online. That'll be a chance for those online kids to make connection with their teachers at that point.
And one of our concerns is obviously, I go back to the social and emotional, just making sure that our kids are okay. It'll be certainly a very direct focus at the beginning of the year, but it's not going to go away. And we need your communication there to help us see things that we may not. Something may happen at home based on the circumstances that are surrounding us right now. Everybody has handled this a little bit differently. So we want to know what your kids are experiencing, and they may tell us, they may not. So you can help us in that respect. And thank you for the nice note. Okay, curious about when our decision for remote distance is due to the district. Is that to be filled out online or in the mail? There is an online link, so you can do it electronically. It's technically due by August 24th, and the reason I selected that is because the last meeting is next Tuesday, so it just gives you some time to decide. I also wanted to push it a little bit in case the virus circumstances changed, but please do, if you're ready to make that decision, it's helping us in the planning. Okay. This is a long one, but the essence of it, if a child is in school on Tuesday and Wednesday becomes symptomatic, you may not learn right away, and they may not receive a positive test for a week. During this time, the people that were in contact with them on that Tuesday in school may be actively spreading to others in their cohort, bus teachers, etc. They won't know it. This is why the CDC recommends what they recommend, not just laboratory confirmed cases. And again, we are very directly working with the Suffolk County and New York State Departments of Health on this, and they are helping to guide us accordingly. So I know there is some variation between what the CDC says here and what the New York State Department of Health is saying here, but this is what we are all addressing in New York State at this point. Okay, will the school be fogged daily, every night? It's a good question. It will not be fogged daily. There'll be a weekly schedule involved for the fogging, and that's in addition to, not in lieu of, the regular cleaning. So just because of the amount of time it takes to get through the building, there will be different areas fogged on a nightly basis, but there will be a schedule for classrooms. I don't know if you want to address that a little bit differently, more thoroughly, Dr. Acker, in terms of the
No,
fogging
that's the case, because the amount of time that it takes to fog a room, there's no way to get to every single room, but there will be a continuous rotating basis where the rooms are fogged. But when the rooms are cleaned in between it, we're using the same chemical as the fogger. So, it just takes a little, it's going to be used, the same chemical is going to be used to cleanse, sanitize the rooms as the fogger. And we've already ran practice runs about how we clean the shields. You know, we have to, you know, test all this stuff to see how we do it, and it works out really well.
And I have to say, once again, between Dr. Acker and my buildings and ground staff, they are working around the clock, hands and knees, measuring square footage in every classroom, so we have this covered to the greatest extent possible. So this is not easy. We are going to pressure test as much as we can before the year begins. Okay, if the questionnaire is to be taken on cell phones, who is making sure every student has access to a working phone which can connect to the internet? And that's again why we have devices and mobile hotspots out there, so that there will be access, whether it be on a phone or another device. We are relying on families, parents, students to fill out those forms accurately. There are just certain things that are going to lie in the hands of what happens of folks before they come to school. So if something is not answered accurately, engaging in that understanding process or helping to generate that understanding, that it can impact others in the building as well. But that's also why we have temperature scanners. So that is in fact at least one of the factors that is identified as a primary symptom, not the only, far from it. We can test that as students or student staff or visitors enter the building.
And the temperature scanners can scan 70 students per minute.
And the next question goes into that again, answering questions honestly. It's the only way that this can be done, because we need this to be accurately and promptly answered before students come to school. If there's a question not answered honestly, that not only puts that child at risk, but all the other children around that child at risk, as well as all of my staff members. So yes, we are relying on family members to help work with their children, as well as the children themselves at the middle school level to a certain degree, to fill out those questionnaires accurately. Right, if students are remote, will they receive textbooks? I think we hit that one. Right, sports and after-school activities. The sports are the interscholastic sports are not in our wheelhouse. They're not in our jurisdiction. Those decisions will come from the New York State Public High School Athletic Association. After-school activities, that's going to be a start of the year decision. Anything that does start at the beginning of the year, you'll hear announcements, and they will start virtually. Right, orchestra and band we addressed early on. All right, resource room be provided for children who receive the support daily. If it's on the schedule, they are going to receive it. Again, all IEP needs will be met. What day is the official day of our child's school year if Chromebooks are not set up? All right, Chromebooks should be set up by that point, or how do we get the Chromebooks set up prior based on class schedule, especially for special needs? So the Chromebook should be there and ready to go. If there is an issue with the Chromebook, we talked about the Chromebooks at hufsd.edu address, as well as the phone number that you can contact. I don't know if you want to add anything there, Dr. Acker or Ms. McCoy?
No, students should have Chromebooks. If they don't, let us know. We have them ready to go. So the reason for the August 24th date is because right now we're servicing the summer school students. So if you try and email that email address now, you're going to get a message that we're only servicing summer school. But once August 24th hits, if you don't have a working Chromebook, please email that address and we will get one to you.
And to follow that, what do we do if technical problems cut us off? Is there a protocol, or should we call into the school to inform that we were cut off? Again, I would use that email address and the phone number.
The phone number is monitored. You're never going to get a human, but the techs all have, it comes into their email. So they're constantly monitoring if you have any issues. And we're ready to help you if you're home and you have a tech issue. It's going to be no different as if you were in the building. We will take care of it.
I do think though, if you lose connection during a class session, to notify the teacher afterwards, like either via an email or chat, just to say, I was logged in and I lost the connection. If I missed anything, please let me know. You just want to make sure you're in communication with your child's classroom teacher.
And just to let you know, when we shut down in the spring, Altice gave everybody a free Optimum hotspot, but they're no longer doing that. So the district is purchasing all of those Optimum hotspots. So you will still have the same access that you had when we shut down in the spring.
Okay, thank you. And again, technical problems, we may not be able to address them right on the spot, so just be patient. There may be a few hours between, and it may compromise that one period lesson or that end of the day. We think there'll be few and far between, but please open that line of communication.
And with
Right.
my text, if you're at home and you need assistance, you're going to receive that within 24 hours, because if we have to prep a new device for you and get it to you, understanding if you email us at 3, you know, we need 24 hours to do that. So just understand that.
Okay, Ms. McCoy, can you clarify, previously stated that remote kids wouldn't be able to interact live with their teacher class, but solely via the chat. Is it different for Finley? Can you just clarify what you said earlier?
Students, I think at the beginning, teachers may be more comfortable or less comfortable with students at home being muted or not. So there is the capability of students from home to ask questions throughout the lesson that would come through the smartboard speakers into the classroom. Some teachers at the beginning may prefer to leave that feature off and have students solely use the chat feature so that they can monitor and control that a little bit better. That will be left up to the teacher, particularly at the beginning of the year as they're acclimating to this new environment. So if they are using the chat feature solely, then if a teacher is teaching for the first 10 or 15 minutes of class and they're really doing their instructional portion, for those 15 minutes, they won't be able to access the chat. So they may have to look at those questions afterwards. So it really depends on where the teacher is and their comfort level as we begin this new educational environment.
Okay, I'm going to try and move a little bit more quickly here because I know people have fallen off. I just don't want to leave anybody's question unanswered. All right. And then I lose my place. That's terrific, Jim. Okay. All right. Will the school be supplying masks if a child comes to school without one? Absolutely. We have ample supply of surgical masks. That's not a problem, but please do help your children remember. Some of the kids will be super anxious. Can children text their family during lunch? Not sure what the phone policy is at Finley. I'm very happy to kick this one to Mrs. Rothel.
Can you repeat that? I apologize. What was that one more time?
Some of the kids will be super anxious. Can children text their family during lunch? Not sure what the phone policy is at Finley.
The phone policies, we don't have phones. I think at this point, it's something that we will have to discuss. I'm feeling that kids being on the phone with technology, I really need them to kind of be at school when they're at school, since they're going to have those 4 days at their home. I'd like them to have that chance to communicate with people, talk to kids. So I'm going to ask them to not use their phones. If there really is an anxious or an anxiety issue, we do have guidance that's available at that time. We will allow students to go to the guidance office where they are able to then contact a parent, make a contact with them there. But I wouldn't want them to take it out during the school day, take phones out, because then it becomes more of an issue of phone. Everyone has their phone out. And I really think that 1 day a week, kids should be communicating with each other and phones should be away.
But I agree with what you said. If there is a child that is really super anxious, let's keep that line of communication open and
Absolutely.
we can work to address it as creatively as we need to. All right,
Sure.
Special ed children, will they get everything they need with learning or one-on-one for help when they are in schools only for a few days a week? I mentioned before that Part IDA and Part 200, we will follow those IEPs as comprehensively as we can, with a couple of modifications made as warranted with your being part of the conversation. Our sanitizer stations throughout the building, yes, they are, and each classroom actually has that hand sanitizer in it, so a child can use it. Again, with your blessing. If you don't want them using it, then you'd have to let us know. In terms of how the classroom will run, engaging students in person and remote learners, how is the teacher going to be able to effectively teach while also keeping updated on the chat questions and dealing with all the online issues? During the spring session, there were some issues that took some time to address. I think we addressed that already during tonight's session. It's going to be a different type of schedule, so that's going to lead to differences across the board. But this may progress differently over time once the teachers become more comfortable with the situation. Okay. Would it be beneficial to have a video made? Here we go. Okay, and she's reading our mind. Would it be beneficial to have a video made showing how the lanes work, any new additions to the building, like the temperature screening, just so that the kids can have a sense before they begin and might not be at the orientation? Spot on to this parent. Yes is the answer. That'll be done at every building. Keep it brief, Mrs. Rothel, but anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, we actually, all the principals have been in contact. We will be coming up with a format from each of the buildings that will basically showing the entry points, what it's going to look like when you come into the building, walking through the hallways, classrooms, any type of shield. So we'll have something very specific. It possibly will be out before the orientation, so kids aren't shocked when they come into the building, or it could be just prior to the first day of school. We're really looking at making sure when the buildings are ready, we're able to videotape those and get those out to parents prior to kids coming in.
Great, thank you. Okay. Students allowed on each bus, I addressed that. 22 on big bus, 8 on van. After school sports, we talked about that. Isolation unit. All right, Mrs. Rothel, can you identify the isolation room in your building?
Yeah, so right next to the nurse's room, it was used to be called the in-school suspension room. I have such positive feelings. We won't have any issues with any discipline this year, so therefore we will use that as the isolation room. It is right next to the nurse's station, bathroom, everything is included, and it's right near an exit area. So if kids do need to leave the building, we have parents can pick up at a very, non-discrete location, and the nurse is able to go back and forth between her area and the isolation area when needed.
Okay, thank you. What is studio art? This is a parent who is new to the district. Once again, I'm sure she heard me before, but please, 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 I'm more than willing to have a conversation with you tomorrow to answer the list of questions that you have. Studio and art is actually somewhat advanced art course for those who are really interested in art, and they get an high school art credit out of it. So like I said to this parent, please don't hesitate to give me a call tomorrow. Next question, so kids can't sit near their friends. That's not what we said. There may be distance between them and barriers at many locations. Thank you for the nice thank you note. Please try and avoid comparing school district to school district. As much as I like being on a positive end of that, for this district, every district has their own situations. Is there contact sports? As of right now, there is not. Right, I mean at lunch so they can find a friend and sit near them and can stay near them going forward. That goes back to so they can't sit with their friends. And I think Ms. Rothel addressed that they can pick desks near their friends, but they will be 6 feet apart. And the barriers will be there, and that's a little intimidating. And I think a parent had addressed that before. Those are the types of things we certainly have to start with. If you move to the next phase and see a spike in case, would you move back to the phase below or something else? And the answer is yes. And listen, something could happen where we have to shut down entirely. There is a regional metric that we're looking at as well, and the governor could hop on and say, you hit 9% and everything is shutting down. So we have to be anticipating and preparing to move to a full district remote on the drop of a pin. So we have that switch ready to flip if the need is there. Okay. My son has severe allergies that can easily be mistaken for flu-like symptoms. How will that be discerned? And we're going to ask you to have your medical healthcare provider assist us with that. There are situations that look like COVID symptoms, and if we know that there is something else involved, we will rely on medical documentation to help us with that. And I agree that, I understand the one-day-a-week thing, that sometimes people have the propensity because they work to push the envelope. I'm just going to keep pressing this home that we need to keep everybody safe here. All right, well, with all of the remote learning, will parents be able to have access to view the daily assignments on each of the teachers' Google Classrooms for their child? The Google platform is not going to change, so assignments that are posted will still be there. For entering 7th graders, do our emails automatically carry over from Woodhull or JAS, or do we need to register again for Finley? No registration necessary. All of your contact information from the prior year is in the system. If you're not getting emails, you can call my office and we'll give you a hand there, but I assume most of you, if not all of you, are. Will handrails be wiped down in between each period? Handrails are one of those surfaces that is going to be the constant source of custodial attention. Handrails, doorknobs, handles, anything you can think of that has hands on them routinely, there's going to be people walking around with the antiviral agents hitting them on a routine basis. What if a child is going to someone's house or vice versa? How will that work with the bus? If it's not your bus, you cannot get on it. What kind of cloth washable masks can we use? And of course, now I can't find my mask, but they should be 2-ply. So you can pull apart 2 layers of it. It shouldn't be something like this that light goes, you can't see this, but light goes through this. This is 1 layer. This is not acceptable. we're going to be pressing that home as well. So 2-ply cloth mask, we'll be providing that, and we will have surgical masks as backups for anybody who forgets. Okay, thank you. We are doing everything we can to get this right. Hasn't been easy, but we're not stopping here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, and I do agree, our special ed department is fantastic. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, if a teacher or child tests positive, how are you handling or figuring out who is near them and who needs to be quarantined? We are going to do the very best we can to document everything. So, you know, there's going to be no half-hearted attendance taking, attendance on bus, monitoring bathrooms, who's in the classroom. If a child is going to a different area of the building, data is going to be taken here, because while the Suffolk County Health Department is going to be initiating a contact tracing process, they will be doing it based on, in large part, what I'm feeding them, and when they contact you, what you are feeding them. We have to give them accurate information, and a large part of that falls on us. Okay, lockdown drills we talked about. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I would not trade this community for the world, and I mean that sincerely. Will pickup still be in front of the building? I think we addressed that. Will children who walk to school, will you have a specific entrance, Mrs. Rothel, for children who walk to school? I know you have 3 entrances. Is one specific to
Yeah, so the walk to school will come through the back entrance, also where the car pickups are. It's just easier to know that those kids did not get off a bus. We'll just keep that distinguished.
Okay. Well, we talked about testing before school is not a requirement. Will passing times be adjusted? At this point, they have not. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. And we are really trying to look at this from a holistic standpoint. Can parents pick up multiple students at dismissal for carpooling? And I'll answer that as I don't have an issue with that, but it has to come with the same permissions. You can't just pick up somebody else's child. I know at the middle school that can be a little bit probably looser than at an elementary level in general, but there should be permission provided by that other parent for you to pick up. Just something you have to keep in mind. All right, Dr. Acker, I have a question here quickly. What will you tell what this fogger is and its the electrostatic fogger? Can you kind of describe how that process works?
Well, basically what the fogger is, it's a saline, it's a salt-based solution.
Just,
and
just so you know, not to cut you off, the parent is concerned about it, whatever's in it being detrimental to health.
It's salt.
Right.
Right, so we make it ourselves. We have a machine that generates this solution, and it's salt-based. That's what's in it.
Right. So anything we use is not only EPA approved, it's EPA approved for school use. So these things, you know, people have asked me, why don't you bleach everything? Well, we can't do that.
No.
There are, you know, things we just cannot use in the school building, and we don't. Any
no
antiviral
Lysol,
agent
no
used?
bleach.
Yep.
Nope.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Will kids be with the same kids for every period of day, basically travel together? And that's what the cohort is for. So the small number of students in the building on that day will serve as a cohort. I'm back to the top. So we have done it. Okay. Thank you to the 66 that stayed with us. I'm sorry to keep this long. I just did not want to shortchange anybody here. We have so much to do, all of us as families and as school community members. Just know that we are here to support you, and that we want to make this right for everybody here. And that's why our first concern is safety and obviously being flexible and addressing the individual needs of your kids. We look forward to seeing you, whether it be remotely to start or not. We will continue to do everything we can to make this work for our community. So if there's anything else you need, please feel free to touch base with us. Get some rest next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever the amount of time is, and we will be waiting for you in September. Thank you again, Mrs. Kanzer. I don't know if you'd like to close here. She's been terrific. And thank you to
say thank you to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Plansky, Mrs. Rothel, Ms. McCoy, Dr. Acker, and we really appreciate you taking so much time with us and being so thorough. And we hope
Appreciate it.
everybody has a great summer. Rest of summer.
Hang in there, guys. We will get through this together. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great
Thank you.
evening.
Bye. Have a good
See you
night.
soon. Good night, everyone.